It was already the year 2326 on Earth. The events took place on the territory of the Samhan Empire, on Mount Sorak. Loud cries were heard that someone needed to be grabbed, and the clatter of the running crowd sometimes even drowned out the voices. The guy ran at an incredible speed and wondered what he had done. His strength was running out. Beads of sweat were running down his face. His mouth was dry. He did not understand why they wanted to kill him. Someone shouted at the guy, calling him Kim Tae-ju to stop immediately. He didn't even think about turning around, as he ran a little further and ran out into a bright light. Suddenly, Kim Tae-ju began to cough violently, and along with the cough, blood appeared, and his heart began to throb. He fell to his knees right in front of the cliff, and one of the crowd addressed him again. The guy held the rank of junior lieutenant. The man asked him if he really thought he could escape without triggering another attack. This man, the platoon commander of the Sorak outpost, Senior Lieutenant Chang In-dong. Jang In-dong asked Kim Tae-jun if the chase was finally over. The guy began to nervously ask them what he had done to them and why they were chasing him. The commander said that the rejector was trash, adding that he should have died a long time ago. He asked him why he had to live to 29 just to get on Her Excellency's nerves. Kim Tae-jun's hands began to shake, and he asked the commander if he meant Honda Mitsui, to which Jang In-dong said that even if she was his stepmother, she was still his commander and asked him to watch his language. After these words, the commander immediately rushed straight at the guy, swinging his sword at him. Kim Tae-jun didn't expect this and was stunned, realizing that he was finished and had nowhere to go. At the last moment, the commander said with a smile that it was time for him to just die. In just a second, the sword was in the young man's chest, blood flying in all directions. Jang In-dong kept his hand steady as he extended the sword towards Kim Tae-jun. The force was incredible. Especially for the already very weak guy, he simply flew down straight from the cliff. Looking at the falling boy, the commander said that the Paju estate would be inherited by Lady Mitsui's 2 sons. With a laugh, he wished Kim Tae-jun a safe journey to the next world, and then the boy collapsed to the ground. About 300 years ago, on one of the days of 2026, that day was remembered by many. The whole world was shrouded in fear, even the sun went out. And the worst thing that could happen was that mana descended to the earth. As a result, 90% of humanity was wiped off the face of the earth. The climate changed, the cities fell into ruins, and thus civilization fell. And only after 300 years, the survivors adapted to mana and revived civilization. However, with the appearance of magical beasts and poisonous herbs mutated under the influence of mana, a new war began. As the war dragged on, a new social hierarchy formed, based on mana aptitude. Kim Tae-jun's father, an awakened master of the highest rank, Brigadier General Kim Un-bang. But Kim Tae-jun himself, although the eldest son, is a mana rejecter, slowly dying from mana poisoning. He stubbornly strove to become immortal. But no matter how you look at it, this is not a heavenly abode at all. It looked like his family's estate, mixed with something quirky. From somewhere, a voice began to be heard asking if Kim Tae-jun knew where they were. Kim Tae-jun lay on the ground, completely wounded by Commander Jang In-dong's sword. Suddenly, he began to slowly open his eyes, not understanding why he did not die. Looking into the distance, the guy noticed a man walking towards him. The man used his magic to lift the boy from the ground and told him to show him his face. They looked at each other point blank, and it was clear from their faces that they were very surprised by something. The absolute demon of poison was a young and rather attractive, at first glance, guy named Tan Gong-ak. Everyone knew him. He was skilled in the use of small, sharp arrows and poison. Tan Gong-ak, head of the Sichuan Tang clan, the pinnacle of poison and hidden weapon mastery. There was a time when a demonic cult threatened to engulf the entire world. Tan Gong-ak was the one who dissolved the heavenly demon into a handful of toxic slime. He has the same soul as Kim Tae-jun. In his later years, he meditated to achieve etheric ascension. Etheric ascension is the shedding of the mortal shell to become immortal. It was then that the souls of Tanguk Aka and Kim Tae-jun became intertwined, as if they had become one. The moment they recognized each other, Tanguk Aka's memories flooded into him. The guy looked at the man and still couldn't understand how this could be, seeing himself in him. In exactly the same way, Tanguk Ak saw all the guy's memories, which also made him feel a little uneasy. Tanguk-ak began to say that Kim Tae-jun was he, only from the earth, but possessing the same soul. The man was perplexed, because a guy with such potential had been neglected all his life because of the shackles of rejection. Indeed, absolutely everyone made fun of him, even those whose status did not allow it. Tanguk Ak said that he now understands that this is their shared mental space. The guy was still completely bewildered, afraid to utter a word. Tangun Ak said that since they were essentially one person, he would give him his experience and knowledge. Kim Tae-jun closed his eyes, his whole body trembling, not understanding what was happening. The man said that if he trained with his knowledge, he too would become the sole ruler of his world. Finally, Tangun Ak told him to use his power to live as he saw fit. After these words, Kim Tae-jun returned to his reality, leaving the mental space. Opening his eyes, he replayed what had happened in his head, not missing Tangun Ak's words wishing him good luck. Suddenly, the guy came to a realization. He repeated several times the name of the person with whom he shared the same soul. He also knew that it wasn't a dream, because every bit of knowledge was still in his head. Kim Tae-jun began to try to get up. He slowly squeezed his hand, which was shaking very badly. He knew that if he wanted to survive right now, he had to master the technique that had made Tangun Aka an absolute master, a martial art that becomes stronger the more poison you absorb. His hand reached out to the strange plant and grabbed it tightly, trying to rip it out by the roots. Curling up, Kim Tae-jun slowly began to bite off small pieces. Out of habit, he found it difficult. He kept telling himself that he had to eat it no matter the cost, because he had to live. The boy was already thinking about what would happen if he managed to turn the poison into internal energy and form a poisonous essence within himself. Then he will be able to rebuild his body and break the shackles of the rejecter once and for all. A lot of anger appeared in him. He decided that he would survive at any cost and pay them back tenfold, starting with Chung In-dong. It was already quite dark when the soldiers continued searching for Kim Tae-jun, and the captain ordered that they make sure he was dead before leaving. The soldiers were perplexed, because they had seen him lying on the ground from the cliff, but they could not find him. Jang In-dong was furious, not understanding why they were taking so long to find just one corpse. One of the boys cried out that he had finally found Kim Tae-jun, but his voice was shaking badly at that moment. The guy sat there as if meditating, and the soldiers began to whisper, not understanding how he had managed to survive, noticing that he seemed different. Kim Tae-jun accumulated internal energy not through mana, but through poison energy. Chang In-dong screamed furiously that he shouldn't just stand there and look at him, but rather kill him quickly before things got complicated. Hearing this, the soldiers began to slowly and fearfully approach the boy. Kim Tae-jun closed his eyes, muttering something incoherently without moving at all. The maple tree flew straight towards him, and he seemed to hear a sharp blade cutting the air. The guy suddenly opened his eyes and looked indignantly in the direction from which the maple tree was flying. Suddenly, the maple tree flew sharply to the side. It hit the tree, making a hole through it. Kim Tae-jun skillfully intercepted it and threw it to the side. There was a lot of rage in his eyes, and every movement was accompanied by a glow. The soldier stood rooted to the spot, trying to figure out how he managed to do it. Kim Tae-jun clearly didn't expect this from himself. Looking at his hand, he tried to understand whether this was the internal energy. Clenching his fist, he began to replay Tangun Aka's words in his head again. The guy pressed one hand against the ground and squeezed the other as hard as he could, keeping the thought in his head that he would be able to repay them by looking at the soldiers. Standing up from his knees, Kim Tae-jun said with a smile on his face that he was glad to see everyone again. Jang In-dong mockingly asked the guy where he got such confidence, adding that he didn't even have a mark. Kim Tae-jun found this quite funny and said it was a kind of awakening. Jang In-dong is currently a rookie, which is equivalent to a third-rate warrior in martial arts. Kim Tae-jun finally realized that there was nothing unusual about him when he asked the captain if he had finished his last words. The guy began to slowly pull his hand out of his jacket pocket. There were coins between his fingers. He waved his hand and said that he would now take back everything they had done to him. The captain asked with a smile if the boy had hit his head when he fell. Jang In-dong screamed that this time he would definitely finish him off and ordered the soldiers to attack him all at once. Kim Tae-jun realized that even though this was his first fight in this body, his mind was surprisingly calm. The guy decided that this must be it, all thanks to Tangun Aka's memory. He understood that even if the mana rejected him, the poison demon path still lived within him. Tae-jun fixed his gaze on his boss, collected his thoughts, and decided that he could handle it himself. The guy swung, using the poison blade technique, which meant only one but quite powerful cut. The coins flew off in all directions at high speed, hitting the very sides where the soldiers were standing and pierced their heads. They were shocked by such precision, but there was nothing they could do. Tae-jun decided to use the Ghost View skill to attack more accurately. The guy began to clench his fist, but from the force exerted, it even began to shake. The blood poison palm was activated and pierced Captain Jang in Dong's chest at that very moment. The soldier heard screams and some strange sounds behind him, which sent shivers through his entire body. He turned around abruptly and saw Tae-jun behind him, mocking the commander. The soldier pointed his gun and began to aim, saying that he should die quickly. The gun was pointed straight at the guy's head, leaving him with no chance of survival. Without thinking twice, the soldier pulled the trigger, his hand not even shaking, although the shot was quite powerful. But Tae-jun had incredible speed, thanks to which he managed to avoid being hit. Looking towards the soldier who was shooting, he said that it was too slow. He took a few steps towards him and stopped abruptly, chuckling quietly. At this time, Jang In-dong somehow managed to speak. His body shaking violently, he asked what Tae-jun did to him. Tae-jun said sarcastically that even the awakened ones are powerless against poison. With the last of his strength, the commander again said that the guy had no mark and asked how he used these skills. Tae-jun said that if Tan Gun-ak heard these words, he would be offended and ask how it would be for him to be in the place of the victim now. The guy narrowed his eyes and said that he should feel as bad as he did. Bleeding, Jang In-dong began to ask for forgiveness and beg the guy for mercy. Tae-jun didn't listen to him and grabbed the commander's neck with all his strength, pressing hard on his throat with his hand. This completely blocked the access to oxygen, causing the commander to suffocate. The guy lifted the commander from the ground, still holding him by the throat with one hand. Jang In-dong started coughing, but he managed to ask the guy if he knew who was behind him. Kim Tae-jun looked at him with disdain. He was disgusted even just to look at him, let alone listen to him. The commander wanted to say something about Mitsui, but at that moment, the guy squeezed his neck even tighter, which interrupted the commander's speech. Tae-jun felt a strong sense of satisfaction at that moment, that he was now capable of much. As soon as he realized that all that was left in his hand was the lifeless body of the commander, he let go of his hand. As soon as the body fell to the ground, a slight smile appeared on the guy's face. He ominously told In-dong not to worry, as he had no intention of leaving quietly. At this time, in the Samhan Empire, it is a state founded after the Manhwa disaster, formed by the merger of Korea, China, and Japan. Paju, Tae-jun's hometown, is also part of the Samhan Empire, and it is a very barren small town. In some office, there was a discussion about Kim Tae-jun's dismissal from service due to an assassination attempt. The man said Lieutenant Jang In-dong and his squad attacked the boy at a cliff during a reconnaissance mission. And after that, Lieutenant Kim miraculously survived, was discharged into the reserve, and then went missing in action. They were informed that Lieutenant Chang and his group had been attacked by monsters and eaten while fleeing. The man clarified that during the investigation, it became clear that the order came from officers with ties to the Japanese side. The general was fixated on the words that it was from the Japanese side and thought about it. Covering his face with his hands, he desperately asked them not to say that it was because of Mitsui. Honda Mitsui, the daughter of an influential Japanese family that became part of the Samhan Empire and the mother of Tai Pyeon and Tai Cheon. These sons are Tae-jun's half-brothers. She always waited for Tae-jun's death to pass on Palju to her worthy sons. But since he died at the age of 29, did she really ask her father from Kyushu territory to organize an assassination attempt? Kim Un-bang thought that this was quite a serious matter, and Paju was now in a difficult situation. He understood that there was nothing left to do but simply hush up the matter. The general told the man that he understood everything and would sort it out himself, allowing him to leave. The man immediately headed out as soon as the door of the general's office was closed, and a slight feeling of excitement washed over Un-ban. He thought that Tae-ju was a rejecter. He would soon die from mana overload anyway. The general realized that it was better to turn a blind eye to this for the sake of Tai Pyeong and Tai Chan, who would inherit the territory. Looking out the window, Un-bang thought that he would never see Tae-jun again and decided not to look for him, leaving him to live freely. Meanwhile, Tae-jun arrived at the Jirisan Mountains, the border zone of magical beasts. The guy was delighted with the view that opened up. From there, the whole of Kure was at your fingertips. There was a man with him who was surprised that this was the first time Tae-jun had seen Kure from such a height. He asked the guy if he really knew almost nothing about this city. The man began to tell how 300 years ago, the free city of Kure was just a small town in the Republic of Korea. In the Jirisan Mountains, the population of magical beasts was unusually high, so their extermination became necessary. Tax exemption on trophies from magical beasts, tolerance of some illegal activities, and much more. With these restrictions lifted, the awoken flocked here, and monster hunting flourished. Thus, the free city became a thriving metropolis, where all those who are thirsty for money flock. The man added that this also means that the area is full of dangerous criminals, which is why one must always be on guard. Tae-jun thought that he talks a lot, but he is quite good. He even gives advice. Some time ago, when Tae-jun survived an assassination attempt while serving in the military, the guy cut all ties after being fired and went in search of a place where he could become stronger. This place became the free city of Kure, where he went together with some unfamiliar guys. The Empire's power there is weak, so it will be difficult for his family to track his location. It's also a great place to train, as it's full of poisonous creatures and toxic plants. Martial arts, the word still sounds unfamiliar to Tae-jun. A wonderful meeting with Tan Gong-ak just before death, followed by the merging of souls. The ultimate poison demon, Gun-ak, who possessed the same soul as him in the world of Marima. He thought that Honda Mitsui, who wanted him dead, actually helped him. Tae-jun still lacked the strength and money to get back on his feet, so he gained experience by working as a porter in Jirisan. The man approached him, asking who he thought was the strongest in their group. He pointed to the swordswoman, saying that she was a pro, Lee Hanul, and had an ordinary rank. The guy thought that since she was ordinary, it meant that she was a rank higher than In Dong, who was just a newbie. But he didn't understand why the flow of her mana was behaving so strangely. Suddenly, her eyes rolled back, leaving only the eyeball visible, and her cheeks instantly turned red. The girl collapsed to the ground, and someone screamed that it was because of the mutated three-striped mosquito. The guy screamed at everyone to do anything to avoid being bitten by a mosquito. Tae-jun looked at the mosquito in bewilderment, not understanding what was so special about it. Suddenly, a female voice screamed for everyone to step aside, that she would deal with him herself. This girl looked quite powerful. In her hands was a staff with a stone at the end, from which a bright glow emanated. The girl held her staff forward, and it was clear that although she looked courageous, she was no less nervous. A huge fireball flew out of the staff and was directed towards the mosquito. As soon as the ball reached the mosquito, a rather strong explosion occurred. The man said that if someone was bitten by this mosquito, their mana would temporarily disappear. He added that many groups had been destroyed because of some mosquito, so it was no wonder everyone was so nervous. Tae-jun thought that the poison similar to the one the boss described was in Tangun Aka's memory. He thought that he should take this opportunity to test it with the poison spirit art. Tae-jun stared at Lee Hanul and asked if she was okay. Some guy looked at his hands, which were shaking a little, and said that this was definitely not the area where these mosquitoes should be. He told the leader that they didn't even have insect repellent suits and suggested retreating. The leader said that since Pro Lee had disconnected, he believed they had no choice. Suddenly, he heard something from the grass ahead and shouted for everyone to get ready for battle. A long-tailed rabbit, a magical beast at the very bottom of the food chain, appeared before our eyes. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, realizing that it was just a small rabbit and posed no threat. The leader smiled and addressed the group, asking everyone to relax and prepare for retreat. Suddenly, the man's face changed. It was clear that he was very scared. The girl began to look through the guys and began to notice silhouettes. A shiver ran through her body. Huge legs appeared in front of them, causing the ground beneath their feet to shake slightly. They were huge orcs, with huge fangs and holding maces in their hands. Everyone started screaming in fear, not understanding where to go or what to do. The girl screamed that she needed a little time, asking to take the wounded and retreat. The boss turned to Tae-jun, shouting his name loudly and afraid to move from the spot. The guy told the boss to go ahead and he would stay with Lee Hanul. He added that there were too many orcs, so he should stay and help. Tae-jun gently placed Lee on his boss's shoulder and asked him to take care of her. The guy asked him to hurry up because there was no time, saying that he would just help a little from the side. The boss finally screamed that he would be back soon and threatened that he should not dare to die. Tae-jun watched what was happening and thought that their movements looked quite coordinated. The girl released a fiery spear, which successfully pierced one of the orcs. She turned around and noticed one of the orcs heading towards the porters. She rushed straight there to attack and block his path. Swinging her staff, the girl screamed for him to stay in place. She activated a wall of fire that prevented the orcs from passing anywhere. Tae-jun immediately covered his face with the collar of his jacket to avoid breathing in the smoke. Suddenly, his face changed dramatically, as if something had really scared him. The girl looked intently at the guy, who shouted at her to lie down on the ground immediately. She didn't understand what this was meant to mean, but one of the orcs was standing right behind her. At this time, on a small island called the Abode of the Immortals. On this island, there was a small body of water on which there was a building. There was Tangun-ak. It had already been a month since he got there, which would have been impossible if he hadn't met Tae-jun. He gained knowledge of the world called Earth through the fusion of their souls. This knowledge gave him new enlightenment, which was quite valuable. Then he achieved the etheric ascension he had been striving for so long. There was one big exception to all this, which he did not immediately realize. He could never have imagined that the abode of immortals would turn out to be a prison for idiots like the Masters. Gunnak watched people flying on swords every day, thinking they were complete lunatics. These were the founders of sects, legendary masters. They are all absolutely the same. They are just animals who have lost all human form. Gunnak spent so many years to end up in such a place. But still, that connection from the past led to this result, so it was worth looking for the positives. Gunnak turned to Tae-jun with interest and asked how he was doing. He began to say that they had one soul for both of them, but due to various circumstances, he became the absolute master of Murim. Gunnak hoped that Tae-jun could find happiness even now by using his power. In order for Tae-jun to surpass the masters he has seen, he needs to reach the 7th star of the Chaos Arts and the absolute poison spirit. With a smile, he said that if fate allowed, they would see each other again. But until then, he would look for something new that he could teach him. Understanding that I will have to work hard on this even while in this prison. His thoughts were interrupted by one of the masters shouting loudly about something. Gunnak could not stand it and went straight to him, saying that he would finish him off right now. At the same time, realizing that the girl was standing still, Tae-jun jumped up. He grabbed her to save her from the huge orc. The girl did not expect this and screamed in fear. Tae-jun moved with incredible speed, a glow spreading from his feet along the ground. Tae mentally asked to be allowed to show her the technique of hidden weapons of mass destruction that he had just mastered. The guy jumped up and, after making a few turns, used the flying daggers technique. They began to pierce the orcs, and a loud roar came from them that could be heard over a great distance. Suddenly, all the coins flew high into the sky with a ringing sound, cutting through the air. Tae-jun landed and punched the ground. At the same moment, the coins fell. The guy didn't expect to finish them off with one blow, but the result impressed him greatly. He looked at the girl lying on the ground and thought about how he had been in such a hurry to save her that he had knocked her out himself. Tae-jun knew that people would definitely suspect something if they were killed by a porter without a single tattoo, and that could get back to his father. He decided that he needed to leave as quickly as possible before anyone came. Tae-jun couldn't believe himself that just a month ago he was an ordinary mana rejector. Taking the briefcase in his hands, the guy thought about cleaning it out before it was too late. He realized that hidden weapons techniques were inconvenient when it came to covering his tracks. Tae-jun remembered what Gunnak had told him, that they would return on their own from the 7th stage, after discovering the missing coin. The guy started looking for the coin, not understanding where it could have gone because he was sure that it was close. Approaching one tree, he saw that the coin was stuck right in the trunk. As soon as Tae-jun reached out to pick it up, that same mosquito appeared out of nowhere. The guy began to watch him closely, trying not to move so as not to attract attention. But interest overwhelmed his reason. He quickly reached out and grabbed the mosquito. Unclenching his fist, he examined it and thought about what he had been told, that they did not live there. Tae-jun realized that this was the same mosquito that had bitten Lee Hanul. The mosquito was on the guy's palm. When its poison spreads throughout the body, his internal energy dissipates. But the awakened ones, on the contrary, in this case temporarily lose their mana. Energy-dispersing poison is a poison that temporarily disrupts the circulation of internal energy in the Dantian. Unlike that world, here it is a dangerous poison for which there is no cure. The boy realized that if he could figure out the composition of the poison, he could use gun aka to create something similar to an antidote. Tae-jun cried out that he had no choice but to taste the mosquito. Without thinking twice, the guy immediately put the mosquito in his mouth, closing his eyes. It was a little hard for him to decide to swallow it, but he managed to do it. But then he smelled money and decided that it would definitely make him rich. Tae-jun decided that he would have to check on him as soon as he got back. His thoughts were interrupted by strange sounds from the side. He slowly turned his head with displeasure. His eyes widened sharply. It was clear that he saw something that he had not expected to see. A huge orc stood before him, with armor and a huge double axe on his shoulder. The guy was shocked, asking himself where the elite orc came from. The orc's eye suddenly flashed red, and there were deep scars around the eye. Tae-jun realized that this was the awakened version of the magical beast he had only heard about in rumors. This wasn't even their usual habitat. He was perplexed by what was happening on Mount Chirisan. Suddenly the orc swung and screamed, calling for Tae-jun to die. His hand dropped sharply and his huge axe sank into the ground. The orc began to aggressively and quickly pull the axe towards himself, cutting the ground. To avoid the blow, Tae-jun jumped high into the sky. He knew that with such power, the orc must be an expert rank. He knew there was a chance that no attack would even scratch him, so he decided to test the waters first. The guy used the art of flying daggers, and along with it, a single flash. The coins flew straight at the enraged orc, who was already looking up. As soon as the coins approached the orc's head, they began to shine brightly. Right before the guy's eyes, the coins simply cracked and crumbled into small particles. Taejun realized that even a single flash, the strongest of his hidden weapon techniques, had not worked. The boy wondered if the poison from his poisonous blood seal palm would be enough for him. The orc began to squeal even louder in response to the failure, preparing for the next attempt. Taejun stood in a stupor, not understanding why he was hesitating right in the face of the enemy. At that moment, he thought that if Tangun-ak saw this, he would seem rather pitiful to him. He realized that he had been too deluded when he dealt with those orcs so easily. The guy decided for himself that no matter what stood in his way, he would beat it until it fell. This is the path of the absolute poison demon. With this thought, he used the poisonous palm of the blood seal. The orc didn't give up either and swung his axe at Taejun with all his might again. The guy seemed to be flying straight towards the orc, who was already ready to cut him in two. Of course, Taejun was afraid, because the difference in size played a rather strong role. A second later, a large flash occurred in the middle of the forest, accompanied by a loud roar. The orc stood with his axe lowered to the ground, which was already pretty damaged. There weren't even any minor scratches on it, as if nothing had happened. Opposite him sat Taejun, trying to catch his breath. There were a few bruises on the guy's face, but he didn't cause any real damage to his body. Then he decided that he would have to beat him again and again. He simply saw no other solution. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a strange object appeared before his eyes. He only saw a lot of movements without having time to move his gaze. The guy's face changed from ominous to lost, not understanding what was happening. Someone with such skills should be a master rank. This man dealt with the elite too easily. Taejun tried to come up with some excuse, since he didn't have time to clean up. The stranger pointed to the lying orcs and asked Taejun if he had done it. The guy asked how he was able to single-handedly cut down a horde of orcs, calling Taejun trash. In response, Taejun simply remained silent. He was not particularly pleased to hear this. The guy stood waiting for an answer, not taking his arrogant gaze away. It was Lee Jun-hak, a member of the Standing Committee of Kure City, captain of the guard, and master of the Nogodan Guild. Taejun was familiar with this disdain, the commanding tone, and the fighting power of a master rank, so he chose his words carefully. When Taejun was about to tell Jun-hak about himself, the boss came out from the side with two more guys. Taejun laughed and said that he was okay thanks to the gentleman who arrived on time. The boss didn't immediately understand who they were talking about and turned his head to the side in bewilderment. Lee Jin-hak said with displeasure that they should call the cleanup team and sort this whole thing out. Because Kure is a free city, it is governed by an autonomous committee rather than the imperial family. Lee Jun-hak is one of the 3 voting members of the Standing Committee and an awakened master. The boss told Taejun that porters like them had to pay tribute to this guild for their safety. Taejun bowed and thanked the master for saving him, and then introduced himself. Jun-hak asked about that. Does he really want to say that it was not he who killed all those orcs? Taejun said with a laugh that all the orcs were destroyed by the magician, immediately after which he passed out from mana depletion. The girl, walking towards them, said that the survivor was safe and that the cleanup team was already on the way. The master said that it was time for them to return, and turning away, headed deeper into the forest. But suddenly, he stopped abruptly, as if he remembered what he had not said. With a wicked smile, he turned to Taejun, saying that he would give him one piece of advice. The master told him not to make trouble, adding that if they met again under bad circumstances, he would not let him go unharmed. The boss immediately clarified that if Taejun crossed his path, his life in Kur would be over, and he should simply stay away from him. He added that he was only a captain of the guard on paper, but in reality, he took bribes from criminals to turn a blind eye to everything. The master goes on patrol only for the sake of appearances and to maintain his reputation. The boss offered to take their precious cargo and go down before it was too late. Taejun thought that if Jun-hak hadn't intervened, he would have been in real danger. He couldn't help but think that more than a month had already passed since the merging of souls, and it was unclear what he had been doing all this time. The guy felt incredibly ashamed and uncomfortable in front of Tangun-ak himself. Taejun decided that from now on, everything would definitely change, vowing that he would become much stronger. Kure is a free city. The urban infrastructure there is quite developed, but something was still missing. The most striking example is that despite normal hospitals, the city is dangerous, so doctors rarely visit them. And the few who do come usually turn out to be charlatans on the run, so the townspeople try to avoid them. As a result, the number of pharmacies began to grow naturally. Pharmacists can prescribe and sell medicines approved by the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety. Ultimately, buying a drug with a proven effect makes much more sense than trusting a dubious hospital. That's why Tae-jun came there to sell the antidote for the mutated three-striped mosquito. The guy spent a whole month in his free time collecting ingredients, and at night he perfected his martial arts. The preparation of the antidote required the finest control, so the third level of poison spirit art was essential. He understood that if he pulled off this deal, he wouldn't have to worry about money anymore. Tae-jun collected his thoughts and entered the nearest good pharmacy. The girl at the cash register greeted him quite nicely and invited him in. She asked what he was interested in, but Tae-jun only asked if the owner was there now. The girl did not expect such a question and sharply turned her head in his direction. Tae-jun said with a smile on his face that he came to the pharmacy not to buy, but to sell. A man standing to the side heard this and almost dropped the box on the floor. To avoid attracting attention, he pretended to have a sore throat. Turning around, the man said he was the owner, Baek Hong-pyo, saying he could talk to him. Tae-jun reached into his bag, saying that he was there because he wanted to sell the medicine he had made himself. Baek Hong-pyo let out a sigh of despair, realizing that this was just another huckster. The man immediately turned away and said that he was not interested, that if he wanted to earn money, he should go to the job market. Tae-jun didn't lose hope and took out a jar, saying that it was an antidote for the mutated three-striped mosquito. Without listening to the end, Baek Hong-pyo was about to say again that he was not interested when he suddenly stopped. He slowly turned his head and asked the guy what this antidote was for. Tae-jun chuckled at first, handing over the bottle. He repeated that it was for mosquitoes. The man stared at the guy, thinking he was just joking. Tae-jun said that this antidote should be taken orally and can even be drunk beforehand. The guy threw the bottle into Baek Hong-pyo's box and clarified that the effect lasts for 10 hours. The man, of course, listened to him attentively, but as soon as Tae-jun fell silent, the owner immediately turned red with anger. He started shouting that if he was going to scam someone, he had to at least lie plausibly. This didn't bother Tae-jun at all. He just said that there were 2 more bottles on the counter. Holding a business card in his hand, he smiled and told Baek Hong-pyo to check them out and contact him if he was interested. Putting his business card on the counter, he said menacingly that they had until midnight. Finally, he said that if they did not answer him by that time, he would take the antidote to another pharmacy. There was a deathly silence in the pharmacy. Baek Hong-pyo stood motionless. He was shocked by what he heard and thought that Tae-jun was just crazy. A certain man reached for the bottle with delight, realizing that this was a much-needed antidote. It was Park Jin-soo, normal rank, raid group leader, heavily dependent on potions. Jin-soo handed the antidote to Baek and asked if he should trust the boy. The owner grabbed the bottle of antidote and said he wasn't at all sure. Holding it up, he said sarcastically that they would know when they checked it. Baek didn't have much hope, but Tae-jun's incredible confidence didn't give him any peace. His thoughts were interrupted by the girl's scream, asking Puck to stop. Turning around, the man saw that the boy was drinking the antidote in one gulp. Having swallowed it, the guy stood in bewilderment, thinking that it was ordinary water. Hearing this, Baek was stunned, not understanding how this could be, because Tae-jun was quite convincing. He asked the guy if he really didn't feel any therapeutic effect. The guy said that if it were an antidote, he would have felt at least some energy, but it was just water. He threw the empty bottle into the trash, saying that he checked everything and that the guy was a scammer. Looking into the box at another antidote, Baek couldn't believe that Tae-jun was just a common swindler. The guy rolled a cart filled with various medications up to the checkout and asked for the bill. He said that today they were going to hunt frogs and that he was already in quite a hurry. At this time, Baek went to the trash can and threw out the antidote and Tae-jun's business card from the box. The guy paid everything in full and headed for the exit, and Baek wished him a good hunt. Baek decided that this was a futile hope, since creating an antidote for mosquitoes was complete nonsense. After some time, Park Jin-soo was already on a frog hunt. A saber-toothed marten appeared out of nowhere on their way, eager for a snack. Jin-soo strengthened his shield, not understanding where she came from or why she appeared here. The girl screamed and swung her sword with all her might to strike. She shouted to the leader that the rear was clear and now was the time to retreat. The girl added that she was also poisoned by mosquito venom and felt like she was about to be paralyzed. Jin-soo asked the girl to be patient for a little while, adding that as soon as they killed this creature, everything would be over. Suddenly, something abruptly distracted the guy from the conversation. Turning his head, he began to hear some strange sound. Jinsu saw a mutated mosquito right in front of his face. He knew that if he was bitten again, the additional dose of poison would dissipate his mana and paralyze him. Looking back, Jinsu realized that if he fell now, the entire group would die. The area was infested with mosquitoes, so they even prepared protective suits, but his shield began to weaken. It dawned on him that a saber-toothed marten had suddenly appeared out of nowhere right where he had been hunting frogs. Their protective suits were completely destroyed in the blink of an eye. Jinsu realized that as the leader of the group, he should have been more careful, but he gave in to panic and ended up getting hit himself. After being bitten by the mutated mosquitoes, they naturally tried to retreat. But it was the martens that blocked their escape route, forcing them to fight to the death. If only they could kill this creature, everyone would survive. But there was little hope left. Jinsu stood rooted to the spot, trying not to even move, and it was clear how scared he was. The marten took off from the ground and was ready to attack, releasing its sharp claws. Suddenly, something hit the shield sharply and quite strongly, piercing it and causing it to crack. It was a marten's tail, and it was so sharp that the shield immediately shattered into small pieces. Jinsu found it rather strange that only the shield reinforcement was destroyed. He realized that he had not lost his strength, and besides, he still had mana. The guy immediately remembered the situation from the pharmacy, where he tried that strange antidote. Jinsu thought that it was real and told himself that he should pull himself together. With these thoughts, the guy immediately grabbed the hilt of the sword, preparing to attack. He immediately rushed to run straight at the marten flying at him, which stretched out its paws with sharp claws forward. Jinsu realized that if the antidote really worked, then he definitely had a chance. After the active fight, the guy immediately went to the pharmacy where he drank the antidote. Although his strength was running out, he understood that he had to tell Beck about what had happened. As soon as he entered, he immediately screamed, calling for the owner. Beck immediately said that they were already closed, but he recognized Jinsu by his voice. The guy started shouting to ask how much that morning antidote cost, saying that he would buy everything he had. The next day, Taeju went to the most famous market in Gure. The shouts of merchants could be heard from everywhere. The loudest of all was the meat seller, shouting that this was exactly what was needed for male potency. A little further on, a man shouted that he was taking orders for armor made from the shell of a magical beast. Taeju saw such a huge market for the first time. His eyes darted in different directions. As he went further, he realized that taking a day off was definitely a wise decision. To make an antidote for mosquito poison, it was necessary to reach the 3rd star of the poison spirit art. This is because one must be able to masterfully control internal energy in order to extract medicinal components from herbs. Perhaps because Taeju overexerted himself, the poisonous essence overload occurred after reaching the 3rd star. This is what brought him to a state where he simply needed rest while he processed the poison. That day they met with Beck, who anxiously asked them to sign the contract. Taeju, with a sly smile on his face, asked him if he was really satisfied with the effect. Bayek said that this medicine would revolutionize the hunting of magical beasts in the Jiri Mountains. The man was only interested in whether the guy had enough supplies and how much he could provide. Taeju said more seriously that he had approximately 60,000 bottles. Adding that, of course, he could immediately launch additional production. Beck handed over the contract and said that he had set the purchase price at 10,000 won per bottle. Taeju replied that these were quite good conditions, despite the fact that the actual cost price did not even reach 100 won. Beck also clarified that after deducting 10% tax, the first delivery would cost 27 billion. The guy offered the man to supply the antidote exclusively for a year at 35,000 per bottle. Beck initially said that he didn't have to give them to him so cheaply, but as soon as the guy said that Beck was running a shelter, the man agreed. Taeju asked if Beck could provide him with a production space in exchange for his help. Beck Hong said with a smile that he had just the right place. They shook hands and said they hoped for fruitful cooperation. Taeju successfully signed a contract for the antidote and received a substantial advance. After that, he went to the famous Kura market to buy equipment on his day off. After some time, the guy started going to the exact place where they sell weapons. A man called out to him and asked if he needed a weapon. Taeju even flinched a little in surprise and asked if he was being addressed. The guy replied that their shop was the best in the area and told him not to pass by and to definitely stop by. This guy acted quite strangely and said that Taeju was quite handsome and he would give him a special discount. Taeju felt uneasy from these words and immediately replied that he definitely didn't need anything. Just as he was about to leave, someone suddenly put a hand on his shoulder and squeezed it. It was that strange guy who asked if he would even look at the goods. Taeju thought that since he didn't have any tattoos, This guy was just an ordinary blacksmith, but he was quite strong. The thought crossed his mind that he might be a hidden master. This guy still managed to drag Tae-ju into his shop where he made all the weapons with his own hands. Tae-ju couldn't help but think that this guy was acting rather strangely. He realized that this was not empty boasting, and decided that he should not judge by clothes in the future. Tae-ju asked him if he could make 100 daggers and handed him a piece of paper. It was an instruction manual for making willow leaf daggers, and the boy began to examine it carefully. The guy said that in order for them to deal damage when thrown, mana steel would be a suitable material. Tae-ju wasn't entirely interested in his reasoning and immediately asked if it was possible to make such daggers. The guy said it would take time because he didn't have many materials. He added that considering the cost of materials, labor, and a discount for its beauty, it would come to 250 million won. Although Tae-ju thought it was quite expensive for disposable hidden weapons, he said he would pay the entire amount at once. The guy finally said that he would send the samples as soon as they were ready. As he was leaving, Tae-ju reflected on how he had managed to get the daggers easier than he thought. But he still had to find the armor. He wanted to carry a lot of poisons and hidden weapons in his clothes, just like Tan Gong-ak did. Everyone reacted rather strangely to Tae-ju. Some turned around and just looked, while others even laughed. The guy wanted to find something modern, armor that could be worn instead of a robe. While he stood there lost in thought, someone called out to him quite loudly. The girl from the boutique said that new armor made from the skin of magical beasts had been released, and they already had coats. This interested the guy, and he thought he could wear it instead of a coat. At this time, in the Samhan Empire, in the same free city of Kure, the city was filled with people and a huge number of different types of transport. Two girls watched a huge and luxurious castle from a vehicle. One of them said that it was a fortress city in 2325, which reeked of vanity. Another added that only the rich, high-ranking awakened administrators or council members could live there. One of the girls was the heiress of the Baekdu group, a military academy cadet, Jong Yeon-hee. The red-haired girl mocked Yeon-hee for coming to Kure for a fox fur coat. Yeon-hee immediately said that this armor has excellent durability, and it is also cool in the summer and warm in the winter. The girl agreed, saying that then it really was a rare material that you couldn't find even with fire. She added that the chairman sent her a black card and told her that she could have whatever she wanted. The bus announced that the next stop was Kure Market and asked passengers to get ready to get off. As soon as Yeon-hee came out, she said that she should go to the boutique right away because she couldn't wait to see the coat in person. At that moment, Yeon-hee and Tae-ju crossed paths in the boutique with the same goal. The girls became wary when they saw the guy. They hoped that he hadn't come for the same coat as them. A cute girl approached Tae-ju and greeted her at the Flame Boutique. The girl recognized the guy and even said his name, which made the guy feel uneasy, and he asked her who she was. The girl said that she was a mage in the same group as him when they were attacked by orcs. Tae-ju remembered her and asked what she was doing in this boutique now. The girl said that this was her main job, and she went on that raid as a part-time job. Tae-ju felt a bit uneasy. He told her to take care of herself and that he had to go. He then had to give her all the credit for hunting orcs, so as not to attract unnecessary attention to himself. He decided it was best to avoid her until she started asking him about that day. But before he could leave, she grabbed his hand. The girl looked at him and asked if it was really he who saved her back then. She said that at the Nogadan Guild, she had to admit that she had passed out from mana exhaustion. Tae-ju said that she was apparently mistaken, because he, as an ordinary porter, could not kill the orcs. The girl said that she was still grateful to him, because she was able to take the bodies of the leader and her lover. Tae-ju looked at her and didn't understand what to do now, feeling a lot of tension. The guy understood that he was driven by a selfish desire to test his techniques. The girl, wiping away her tears, apologized to him, saying that she did not want to put him in an awkward position. The red-haired girl cried out in displeasure that they couldn't wait any longer. The girl panicked and asked them for forgiveness, turning sharply in their direction. She suddenly fell to her knees. Her body was shaking. She could barely string together a couple of words. She began to apologize to Yeon-hee, saying that she was very sorry, but she could not sell her this coat. Of course, Tae-ju heard about this and pricked up his ears to listen to their conversation. The red-haired girl was furious, saying that it was very difficult for her mistress Yeon-hee to find time to come to them. The girl, sobbing, said that now she needed this coat for another purpose. She added that she would compensate them separately for any inconvenience, repeating several times that she was very sorry. The red-haired girl tried to say something else, but Yeon-hee held out her hand and said that they should stop there. She started to leave, saying that I just had to accept it and leave. adding that they had already been told that they had found another use for it. Tae-ju felt uneasy and asked if it was an important client, adding that he had caused her problems. The girl immediately said that everything was fine and that she should apologize for shocking him so much. The guy asked her why she decided so abruptly not to sell the coat, to which the girl laughed. She said that he was probably often called a slowpoke because he still didn't understand what was going on. Without waiting for an answer, she smiled and said that she was giving him this coat. The guy froze in place, not understanding how to react to this because he could not have expected this. The girl told him to consider the silver fox fur coat a gift for saving him. Tae-ju said he couldn't accept it, saying he didn't save her with good intentions. The girl said that it didn't matter because the most important thing was that she survived. She added that if it bothered him so much, then next time he needed to save even more people so that they wouldn't lose their lives. The guy felt uneasy, realizing that no one had ever thanked him so sincerely. He was constantly criticized, and this situation stunned him because he did not help her out of good intentions. But Tae-ju soon realized that this wasn't such a bad feeling. The guy agreed with her, saying that if she insisted, he would gratefully accept the coat. The girl said she felt a great sense of relief, and they began taking measurements. At this time, in the abode of the immortals, a certain man was floating in the air and simply laughing. But his laughter quickly turned to rage at how bored he was. This is an immortal sword, Dongbin. He told himself that there was absolutely nothing to do in this damn monastery. They say that everyone there looks the same, clothes, beard, and white hair. He watched everyone and his indignation knew no bounds. However, he noticed one who stood out a little. He was talking about a guy from the Tang clan who also came from Murim, but he was the only one who looked different. Dongbin noticed that he changed his hairstyle, because this is his style from another world. He trimmed his beard and even sewed clothes. He thought about asking him to teach him how to sew clothes, hoping that it would add some variety to his boring everyday life. He let out a heavy sigh and quickly decided that he would go to him right now. Dongbin decided that in exchange for some valuable thing, he would gladly teach him how to sew. From his bosom, he took out the heavenly peach of longevity from the abode of immortals. At this time, in the city of Kure, after long measurements, Tae-ju went on further. He found himself in a strange room. From some of the many rooms, a green glow emanated. Tae-ju was right there, and for some reason he dipped his hand into the water. And immediately after this, he exclaimed that everything worked out just as he had planned. Tae-ju took his headphones out of his pocket and carefully inserted them into his ears. He called Baek Hong-pyo and said that he had finished preparing the concentrated solution. Beck said excitedly that supplies were almost running low and asked when he could send the solution. Adding that the rumors about the cure spread instantly, people rushed in crowds, causing real chaos. Beck also said that the resellers had also become brazen, so the supplies ran out very quickly. Tae-ju told Baek to announce that the supplies would be regular and suggested a limit of no more than 2 bottles. Beck agreed, saying demand is so explosive that counterfeits could appear faster than expected. Tae-ju didn't care at all. He said that everything would be fine. He said that someday it might be possible, but now it is out of the question. Beck said they would try to hold out by controlling sales volumes. Tae-ju said that packaging takes longer than production, adding that he hasn't been home for a week because of it. Some children approached the very room where Tae-ju was, wanting to see what was going on there. The boys said that there was just a tramp who stole their secret base. Suddenly, right before their eyes, the handle began to spin. They screamed because it was unexpected. As soon as the door opened slightly, smoke began to spread out from the room across the floor. Tae-ju was already standing in front of them, and behind him there was a bright glow, which looked even more frightening. The boy winked at the children and greeted them with a wide smile. It looked really quite scary, and the children started screaming in great fear. They started running away, saying that it was a ghost, not some kind of tramp. Tae-ju even felt a little offended because he barely managed to finish packing on time and go outside. He thought about how he hadn't washed for a week, not understanding why they called him smelly. The director asked Tae-ju to come out as a substitute, but in order to sing at the meeting, he needed to come out right now. He thought about washing himself, even if he was a little late. Suddenly, an unfamiliar girl appeared in front of him, and behind her, those same guys, she said that she heard from her father about antidotes. The guy stood there in bewilderment and immediately asked the girl who she was. The girl said she was pleased to meet him, introducing herself as Baek So-yeon. So-yeon said that the younger ones kept talking about a ghost in the basement and she decided to go down and check it out herself. She held out the box in her hands, saying that she should give it to him. Tae-ju immediately guessed that it was from the weapons store, the very prototype that he needed so much. So-yeon said she hoped he would continue to have a good relationship with her father. As she was leaving, she asked him to stop by the cheap one on the ground floor before she left. Tae-ju thought about checking his weapon first and then going to wash himself. Upon opening the box, my eyes immediately fell on a small note lying on top. It contained a message from the guy where he called Tae-ju dear and asked to test the daggers in action. This note sent shivers down Tae-ju's spine, and his hands shook involuntarily as he immediately tore the note apart. Exhaling heavily, the guy reached for the long-awaited daggers. He immediately realized that the thing looked decent and the dagger was definitely sharp and durable. After tossing the dagger a few times, Tae-ju noticed that the weight and balance were also just right. The guy decided that since the willow leaf dagger turned out so well, he was already eagerly awaiting the finished cloak. The girl then said that she would give it to him for free and would contact him when everything was ready. Time was running out, but remembering So-yeon's words, I decided it was still worth taking a shower. After some time, Tae-ju went to the border zone of monsters, to the Jirisan Mountains. Everyone was already assembled and were waiting only for Tae-ju, who was already standing to the side. Noticing the director, the guy walked towards him and screamed, indicating that he was there. The director was glad to see him, since the situation was hopeless. The guy he was replacing had suddenly disappeared somewhere. He said that Tae-ju had arrived just in time, thanking him for coming despite the urgency. Tae-ju said that there was no need for gratitude, since the director had helped him well, and for him this favor was a trifle. Someone shouted at him that he was a lousy porter, that he had arrived last and should have come up straight away and apologized. It was Kwon Dong-seok's raiding party member, Jang Won-jun, who was still a rookie. Tae-ju then told the guy that he was overstepping his bounds since he wasn't late for the appointed time, so he didn't have to apologize. Won-jun cried out that Tae-ju must be a simple adapter, so he shouldn't hope for anything. It's so stupid. Tae-ju thought about how it had become clear to him why he had come here as a replacement, and it was no wonder why everyone was running away. The director said that he would compensate Tae-ju for everything. He begged him to just be patient because the contract could not be canceled. The guy closed his eyes and, realizing that this was not the first time this had happened to him, apologized to Won-jun. Won-jun turned away and said that he was just lucky because he was about to cut something off for him. The director asked Tae-ju several more times if he was okay, in response to which the guy simply calmed him down. Suddenly, Tae-ju realized that they were going on a large-scale raid just 7, although at least 15 people are needed. He turned to Won-jun and said that although it was fashionable now to reduce the number of people because of mosquito antidote, the composition was small. The guy added that he was asking this for the safety of the porters, whom he looked down on. This made Won-jun very angry, and he screamed that Tae-ju was just a suicide bomber who kept snapping at him. Tae-ju was fixated on the words about the suicide bomber. His brows furrowed and his gaze seemed to pierce right through him. Won-jun thrust his sword forward, saying that he would finish him off right here and now. Newcomer Kwon Dong-seok joined the conversation, saying that if Won-jun killed the guy, there would be no one to carry the equipment. Won-jun said that the porters in Kure must have gotten lax because he had never heard such a thing from any lousy porter. Dong-seok hugged Won-jun and said that at this rate, Tae-ju might also run away if he continued. Tae-ju was filled with anger, and he couldn't stop thinking that they should just be killed instead of enduring them as he had done before. The director ordered everyone to take the antidote because time was running out and they had to move. He approached Tae-ju and said that he felt like he had asked him for an unnecessary favor this time and that he was sorry. He also added that the hunt would take place in the area of the Bladed Martens. But thanks to the antidote, the number of people had been reduced. The director held out the antidote in his hand, telling the boy to drink it down to the bottom as he had brought a separate portion for him. At that moment, Tae-ju thought about how the power he now possessed had led him to new changes. He remembered the girl's words asking the guy to save more people next time. Tae-ju realized that since the number of people dying from raids had decreased, he would be able to save more people with his power. Immediately, a silhouette appeared in his head, where the newcomer was trying to humiliate him, not representing anything himself. Having met those guys, Tae-ju had already lost control of his unbearable killing urge twice. He guessed that the reason was because of Tang-gun Aka, or more precisely, because he was an absolute poison demon. His nature is to kill absolutely everyone he doesn't like, not forgiving even minor offenses. Tae-ju didn't hide the fact that he was completely sure that Tang-gun Aka had a poisonous heart. This meant that his heart merged with Tae-ju's heart, and this was for the best, because he was too weak to survive in such a world. Having thought everything over, the boy approached the director with a request to stay closer to him during the raid. He was insistent, saying that he was not joking and was absolutely serious in his words. Because from the very beginning he felt something from the depths of the forest. Pausing slightly, he realized that it was a ferocious killing intent that was directed at them. At this time, in Murim, in the Zhuge clan, everything was on fire. The sky was invisible because of the smoke. There was ash everywhere. Someone coughed quite loudly, as if trying to attract attention. Another man heard a male voice above him and looked up in confusion. It was Zhuge Chang, yelling at Tangun Aka for raising his hand against them, asking if he had gone crazy. Tangun Ak replied menacingly that it was shameless of him to speak to him like that. He cried out that everything's secret had become clear, how Zhuge Chang and his clan had secretly conspired with the demon cult. The man started shouting that this was all slander, because they were one of the 5 great clans. Tangung Ak cried out that they were the henchmen of the demon cult, always pretending to be innocent. These words shocked the man. A strong tremor ran through his body, as if Gun Ak was doing something to him. Gun Ak giggled and asked Zhuge Cheon if he wanted to say hello to his son. Speaking of which, he slaughtered innocent people and used their blood to create demonic blood pills. Looking at the man, Gun Ak asked him if he still considered his words slander. He added that what he hated most were bastards like them, scum like them who use the weak as a shield. Zhuge Chang began to beg for mercy, saying that he would tell everything he knew about the heavenly demon. Gun Ak responded by saying that countless warriors from the righteous factions had died senseless deaths because of him. His eyes flashed after these words. Anger seemed to consume him. He shouted one last time for Zhuge Chang to disappear. Gun Ak directed his powerful force straight at the man. Everything around was sewed, and a moment later a scream could be heard. As soon as the swords pierced through Zhuge Cheon, Gun Ak said that he would soon send the heavenly demon to hell after him. At this point, someone from the squad said that a pack of martens was nothing, since they didn't even need any special equipment. Won Jun was amazed by the large number of crystals, and then said that he was not surprised why Taeju was just a porter. Taeju was furious, because he knew that they were only able to defeat them thanks to his antidote. The thought of simply killing him never left his head, because he knew that they would die soon anyway. He immediately decided that he needed to restrain himself, because such scum did not deserve to become the first victims of his technology. Thanks to the antidote, just 2 novices and 3 experts were able to defeat an entire pack of martens. Having thought about this, the guy immediately turned his attention somewhere to the side. He peered into the bushes and wondered if they could handle the creature he had sensed. Taeju turned to the director, saying that everything would start soon, and repeated his request to stay close. Hearing the sound of trampling, the boy said that it was just the notorious dangerous beast from Mount Chirisan. It was an ambush of a magical beast. Its eyes were bright red, its grin sharp and menacing. The director was overcome with intense panic. It was difficult for him to put together even 2 words. His whole body was shaking and did not allow him to move away. The wolf was already right next to the director, and then he cried out that it was a red-furred wolf. Taeju tried to calm him down, saying that nothing would happen to them, and for some reason began to ask for forgiveness. The red-furred wolf is a magical beast that requires at least a normal rank to fight. His power is certainly a big problem, but there is something much worse and more terrible. These wolves always hunt in pairs, a male and a female, the sight of which made Won Jun's legs shake. Won Jun desperately began to swing his sword, trying to scare the wolf away from him. But such abrupt movements only angered the wolf even more, which is why he sped up towards the guy. Won Jun panicked greatly because the wolf skillfully dodged all the swings. He began to scream, not understanding what to do next. Newcomer Dong Seok simply began to run away into the depths of the forest, because he understood that if he stayed, it would be the end for him. The girl, Won Jun's sister, screamed that they would just die, to which her brother said that they would just do as usual. Taeju heard that Won Jun was going to use the porters as bait and just run away. The director began asking Taeju to do something already because the situation was only getting worse. The guy reached into his pocket for something, saying that he would show his technique right here and now. He released the dagger, a single flash. He was serious and did not even think of retreating. The dagger first flew right past the head of one of the squad, which greatly frightened the girl. After which, in an instant, he found himself at the head of the fleeing Dong Seok, who even screamed in fear. The dagger plunged into the stone with incredible speed, sending many small fragments flying in all directions. Someone screamed very loudly, causing all the birds in the trees to fly away even further. The director stood there in bewilderment, trying to understand what had just happened and what Taeju had thrown at him. The guy started to get indignant because the one who was supposed to protect him simply abandoned the squad, and the other one wants to set him up. Taeju cried out that he really hated such scum who were ready to do anything just to save themselves. The dagger grazed Won Jun's ear. Blood flowed down his face, and he simply stood rooted to the spot. Something suddenly caught the guy's attention. He stared somewhere ahead and excitedly tried to say something. He noticed a dead wolf lying on the ground and began to ask when and who managed to kill it. The director began to ask Tae-ju how he managed to catch the wolf with just one blow. The female wolf began to growl loudly and slowly approached Tae-ju, her eyes filled with rage. Tae-ju immediately walked towards her, loudly telling her to shut up and not make another sound. He walked along saying that he was in a very bad mood and that if she took even one step, she would die immediately. Tae-ju asked Won Jun if they always acted so meanly towards others. When things get dangerous, they simply throw the weak to the wolves and run away. Won Jun started shouting that it was natural that the weak should die for the sake of the awakened. Hearing this, the guy closed his eyes and exhaled heavily. He clearly felt uneasy. Fixing his gaze on Won Jun, he said that he would have to experience the same thing himself. Literally a second later, Tae-ju found himself on top of the cliff. No one had time to blink. Tae-ju looked down on them and told Won Jun that he should hurry up and start fighting. The boys looked at him with horror and strong fear inside, not understanding what to do. Sitting comfortably on the edge, Tae-ju said that he had dealt with one himself, and the second wolf was left for him. Dong-seok was furious, saying that he wouldn't get away with treating an awakened person like that. The girl from the squad started shouting that they would pay Tae-ju as much as he wanted, just so he would catch the wolf. Suddenly, something flew between Dong-seok and the girl, and they screamed in surprise. Tae-ju came back down and said that since he didn't understand human words, he didn't need his ears anymore. He threateningly repeated to them once again that he was a porter and they were fighters, so everything was fair. He added that he didn't understand where that confidence had gone after killing the pack of martens. The wolf was already furious. He was ready to attack right now, at any second. But it was as if he was waiting for the right moment. Tae-ju looked at them with disdain and strong disgust, realizing that they were truly afraid. Having climbed a little higher, he began to hear excited speeches about how they would not cope. Won Jun asked the boy if he really thought they would do everything as he said. Tae-ju thought about it and decided that they must have completely different plans, which made him even more angry. Suddenly, Won Jun grabbed the sword with both hands and shouted for everyone to run away. He didn't have time to turn his head before a paw flew at him with all its force right in the face. The guy flew quite a distance to the side with a loud cry of pain and fear. Dong-seok started shouting that he would just kill the stupid porter Tae-ju as soon as he got to him. He slowly turned his head to the side, and right next to him, the wolf's huge mouth opened. Won Jun started shouting that they needed to run away immediately, that they wouldn't cope and would die. The girl began to run as fast as she could, but the powerful wolf did not even let her out of sight. The girl only had time to turn around to make sure that she was at least moving away somehow, but the mouth was already near her face. The wolf, without thinking, immediately bit her throat, tearing her body into small pieces, enjoying every bite. The wolf began to turn his head in different directions, scattering pieces in different directions. His eyes seemed to emanate rage into the air. He was insanely angry and ready to attack again and again. He stared off to the side as if taking aim at his prey. The director began to panic and shout to Tae-ju that the monster was heading straight for him. The guy said with displeasure that if he had just left, he would have left him alive, adding that even after he had clearly demonstrated the difference between them, he was still confident. After thinking for a few minutes, the guy decided that it was time to come down to earth, to everyone. He was flying down very quickly as if he was about to crash, and suddenly he screamed that he wanted to die. Tae-ju directed his power at the wolf using double palm blood poison, which greatly angered the wolf. The leaves of the trees and stones swirled like a whirlwind, and everything was accompanied by a bright green glow. The director suddenly cried out that he had not seen a coat of arms on the guy, so he decided that he was, at best, a candidate. He immediately remembered the huge orc that the magician had supposedly killed, but he realized that Mr. Kim had lied to hide his power. Tae-ju went to the director and said that he enjoyed stretching his legs after working long hours making medicine. Suddenly, the director threw himself on the ground, hiding his face, and began to beg the guy for mercy. Tae-ju felt awkward about this and asked him why he wanted to kill him. The director, hearing this, raised his head with relief to look at the guy. The guy started to worry about him and started asking if he was injured and if everything was okay. After making sure everything was fine, Tae-ju asked the director for a small favor for him. Tae-ju fixed his menacing and intent gaze on the man and began to speak slowly. He said that the director did not see anything at all about what was happening and whose doing it was. The director didn't even ask any unnecessary questions. He immediately said that he had already forgotten about everything. The torn corpses of the guys from the detachment lay on the ground, but Tae-ju did not feel any pity when looking at them. He knew that if they didn't remove the bodies, the monsters would definitely take care of it. Tae-ju kept repeating the same phrase, that those who use others as a shield to protect themselves definitely deserve to die. Some time passed, and loud and emotional showdowns took place in the Cure Fortress, at the pharmacy headquarters. Someone banged on the table, indignantly complaining that their sales had been cut in half. He shouted that since the antidote had gone on sale, everyone was going to Beck's store, and while they were there, they were buying other medicines too. Adding that in the meantime, they are simply sitting idle, and this shop should have been crushed a long time ago. Another man, Oh Nam-bok, said that Bayek's pharmacy was the only one that no one could reach. Gil-ho replied that it was because of the self-government committee who were protecting Bayek because he was feeding orphans. Nam-bok angrily replied that they were all too busy to solve this problem. Jo Hoon-seok told Lee Gil-ho to calm down, adding that he argues every time they meet. Hoon-seok suggested stopping the empty talk and sharing the results. Gil-ho said that Kure Nuri failed to create a copy of the drug just like New Horizon. Nam-bok intervened, saying that they would eventually make a copy, that it was just a matter of time. Gil-ho cried out that the problem was what was happening now. There was a high chance of going bankrupt while they waited. Then, Hong Seok said with a smile that the committee was a serious hindrance and began to insist on proceeding as usual. Gil-ho said with a mischievous smile on his face that this was exactly what he wanted to hear from the director. He also asked if they had finished their investigation, after which he smirked and pressed the button. A photo of Tae-ju appeared on the screen, along with information about him, even the fact that he was discharged into the reserve with the rank of officer. Nam-bok immediately said that if his father was a general, it meant that this guy was a master. The director said that no one should rush to conclusions because this was superficial information, and now he would show the real story. He said that Tae-ju only joined the military after he was kicked out of his home, and his half-brothers wanted him dead. Gil-ho immediately said with a smile that it was a good thing that he had cut ties with his family. Hoon-seok said that if they offered more, they could take over the distribution rights, adding that if he refused, they might see someone's blood for the first time in a long time. Samhan Empire, in the main building of defense against the monsters of Jirisan. Someone knocked persistently on the office of the commander of this corps, and a menacing voice allowed entry. A guy put his hand to his head and said that he was ready to report the information. He said they received information from the Kur Local Government Committee. The commander looked at everything and said that he heard rumors that Tae-ju was the eldest son who rejected Mana. He realized that since he was the son of a general and a former soldier, they might be able to request supplies. The commander thought that if they got the antidote, they would be able to begin a large-scale cleanup before the wave of monsters arrived. This is the commander of the Monster Defense Corps, Lieutenant General Oh Jin-hyun. Jin-hyun ordered that Paju Province be contacted immediately and that he wished to speak with Brigadier General Kim. In General Kim Un-ban's office, a man loudly told someone that he was ordering destruction. The man hung up the phone abruptly and rather aggressively, exhaling heavily. Honda Mitsui immediately said that they say that even a worm has pride. She indignantly asked Un-ban about when Tae-ju had managed to learn everything since he was always sick. Honda Mitsui suggested that they go to Kure immediately, since the guy had no experience at all in communicating with people. Un-ban looked at the girl very menacingly and told her to just leave his son alone. Adding that they had already removed Tae-ju from the family register, he was no longer their son. Hoda Mitsui responded to this by saying that the blood knots were still there and they should help him. Un-bang screamed at her to stop, that if she had any conscience, then it was time to stop. The girl became a little nervous, thinking that Un-bang knew about the assassination order. She screamed for the man to at least tell him to supply the antidote to the military. Honda Mitsui began to say that they could barely pay for Tai Pyong and Tai Chun's education. The man said in a calm voice that then she should go and ask him about it herself. He added indignantly that he had already made it clear that he would not do this. These words made the girl even more angry, and she even began to bite her lips out of anger. Turning away, Honda Mitsui said that it would be as he said, that she would do everything herself. As soon as she left, Un-bang thought that he was sure that his son was dead because he had not heard from him for a long time. He was glad that Tae-ju was spending the rest of his life usefully. At this time, the guy went to a place already familiar to him, the Kure market. Tae-ju went to the same flame boutique where he had been looking for a coat. The girl had already tried the cloak on him, and suddenly cried out that she knew it. After looking at the guy from different angles, she said that the coat suited him very well. Tae-ju thanked her, saying that the coat made from monster parts was quite different from the others. He said it was lightweight, yet highly durable and even thermoregulating. The guy added that he also likes that the coat has a lot of storage space. The girl asked him if he was awakened in the field of weapons, to which the guy agreed. Tae-ju said that he couldn't take such a valuable thing for free and asked how much it cost, adding that the girl gave away an item that someone else had already reserved. The girl said that Ms. Jung Yeon-hee was fine and had already sent her something else. Tae-ju let out a small sigh of dissatisfaction. He didn't understand how he could find out the price of the coat. He cried out loudly that he would take everything then and pointed his fingers at 2 display cases. The guy said he would donate these things to children in the orphanage and at the same time help her increase sales. The girl, gritting her teeth, said that she would go and pack everything since he insisted so much. She thought that he was clearly different from the awakened ones she had seen recently. Someone entered the boutique saying that Tae-ju had been searched for a long time, but he was here. The man introduced himself as Cho Hoon-seok, the general director of the pharmacy, and handed over his business card. Tae-ju remained silent in response and looked at the business card with displeasure. Hoon-seok suddenly said that he thought his sudden visit had taken the boy by surprise and asked if he would shake his hand. Tae-ju sternly asked the director how he knew where he was. Hong-seok said with a smile that in the city of Kure, nothing escapes their pharmacists' association. He immediately asked why Tae-ju didn't start supplying the antidote to the poison to them too. The guy, noticing the intonation and facial expression, smiled and asked if it was a threat. Hoon-seok spread his arms wide and said that for now it was just a request, to which the guy sternly replied, no. Tae-ju thanked the director for the offer and said that he did not want to become a man without honor. Hoon-seok then offered to at least sell them the formula, for which he offered 5 billion. The guy asked the director in response whether he would have sold the formula for such a small price in his place. Hong-seok said sternly that the guy was not listening to him, and with this approach, it would be difficult for him to settle in Kure. To this, Tae-ju said that the director should not worry about him and that he would cope. After leaving the boutique, Hoon-seok thought that Tae-ju was a stubborn boy who would regret his choice. He immediately called someone and angrily told them to start work. It's already evening, on the outskirts of the city of Kure, at the construction site of Kim Tae-ju's villa. Tae-ju walked happily with a bunch of bags from the boutique, wanting to relax. Baek was already waiting for him, and when he saw him, the guy cried out with a smile that he had already arrived. Baek was glad to see him and immediately asked what he had in his hands. Tae-ju said that Baek helped him a lot, and he decided to repay him in kind by saying that these were things for children. Baek said he would never forget his kindness and promised to work even harder from that moment on. Tae-ju was a little embarrassed and said that he was very glad that he liked it. Turning towards the building, the guy thanked the guy for all the hard work, from purchasing the building to the construction itself, adding that he had thought about it and decided that he would accept the offer that Baek had spoken of. He said that CEO Hoon-seok came to see him today, and after meeting with him, he was only convinced of his decision. Hearing the name, Baek became a little nervous and asked if he had harmed Tae-ju. Tae-ju said he was just making a threat, but it made him realize again how people without power are treated. The guy said he was going to start a pharmaceutical company, just like Baek had suggested. Tae-ju asked the man to make sure the construction was completed on time while he went away for a while. The guy said that before opening a company, he wanted to try to develop a new drug. The art of primordial chaos and absolute poison spirit, a unique martial art created by Tang Gong-ak. It combines the qigong of the 5 elements, water, wood, metal, fire, and earth, and consists of a total of 10 levels. After the 10th level, you need to open your poison spirit through enlightenment. Only then can you use the rain of myriad flowers. Thus Tan Gong-ak, who with the help of his poison arts dissolved the heavenly demon, the ruler of the demon cult. The next day, on Mount Chirisan, in a strong monster spawn zone, Tae-ju, who had already practiced on monsters, appeared there at the speed of light. There was a fierce battle with a leopard cat, which was quite impressive in size. The guy was already pretty tired of chasing him and dodging the huge paws. He pulled a dagger out of his coat, grabbed it with both hands, and was already preparing to deliver the final blow. With a powerful leap, the guy jumped up and raised his hands above his head. A second later, the dagger was thrust straight into the head of the monster, who fell to the ground with a wild roar. Turning around, the guy made sure that nothing else posed a danger. Tae-ju thought about how he was called a leopard cat, but he turned out to be the size of a whole tiger. The skin was so tough that his weapons and internal energy could barely cope with it. Now Tae-ju is at the 3rd stage of the art, somewhere between the 1st class and 2nd class masters in Murim. For him, who possesses the knowledge of Tangun Aka, this training is nothing more than a repetition of what has already been covered. Since Tae-ju started with a full understanding of the essence, he can now grow quickly as he absorbs new types of poisons. His body couldn't handle the strain for a while, so he was stuck in stage 3. But now the transition shouldn't be a problem. If Tae-ju can absorb the poison of the spore water deer, which was his original goal. The boy sped up because he remembered that he needed to pick up his throwing knives. The spore water deer is a docile monster that does not attack first. This deer has 2 humps on its back, just like a Bactrian camel. Without thinking twice, Tae-ju went straight to him to kill him. This gentle monster is considered dangerous because after its death, these humps burst. Burst humps release microscopic, highly toxic spores. Tae-ju watched this spraying and waited for them to become more and more less active. This is the very same poison that supposedly corrodes even gas mask filters. It dissipates in the air for an entire hour. As Tae-ju had heard, this was the most powerful poison he had ever encountered, and such a valuable asset could not be allowed to go to waste. The guy put his hand forward and the poison molecules seemed to be attracted to him. He told himself over and over again that he needed to concentrate harder. Tae-ju knew he needed to concentrate the poisonous ki in one place, and only after that you need to absorb it with your body, no matter how hard it may be. Tae-ju thought about using his art of chaos and absolute poison to transform into internal energy. Concentrating, the boy closed his eyes and began to absorb the poison into his body. With his eyes closed, Tae-ju wondered how long he had been circulating his ki. He understood that now he needed to transform the poison into internal energy. Tae-ju knew that with this poison, he had the advantage and should be able to become stronger. The guy kept telling himself that it was better this way than to never find himself in the same situations again. Remembering how he apologized to Junhak and how he threatened him. A sphere teeming with poison formed in his hands again. He was ready to finish. Suddenly, Tae-ju cried out joyfully that he had finally moved on to the 4th stage. Lucky guy, he just thought it took quite a long time. Getting up from the ground, the guy stretched out. His body had become very stiff after such a long time. He stayed on Mount Chirisan longer than he expected, but he reached the 4th stage and discovered the ingredients for the antidote to deer poison. Looking at the setting sun, Tae-ju thought that it was time to go back. As he walked, he realized that he didn't want to leave for long while people from various pharmacies were milling around. The guy immediately headed to Beck's pharmacy to find out how sales were going. Throwing off his heavy backpack, the guy shook himself off and looked around. Looking towards the cash register, he told Beck that he was already back and asked how he was doing. Receiving no answer, he asked if business was improving, judging by the fact that the goods were completely sold out. Beck said he was very worried because he couldn't get through to him. The girl was also glad to see Tae-ju and greeted the guy. Tae-ju said he turned off his phone due to training and developing an antidote. Beck said in an upset voice that the sales representative said they would no longer supply the goods and took everything away. He added that the licensing department had requested a list of ingredients to investigate the antidote's side effects. Tae-ju thought that this was the work of Cho Hoon-seok. These thoughts made him very angry. Beck said that this is the method that Hoon-seok usually uses, and he is also a member of the autonomous committee. Tae-ju asked Baek what would happen if they didn't provide them with the list of ingredients, to which the director said that in the worst-case scenario, they could be banned from selling it. The guy thought that neither he nor Tangun-ak were willing to compromise and that he would just have to smear them. He approached Beck with a proposal to strike first and raise the temperature, since they were going to threaten them. This proposal surprised Beck quite a lot, and even made him feel a little nervous. Tae-ju said that since they claim the antidote causes side effects, then they shouldn't sell it. He suggested closing the shop right away. After the conversation, they went to the shelter to Beck. A pleasant and promising smell of meat wafted from the yard, making my mouth water. Beck and Tae-ju joined the late dinner, already looking forward to a delicious meal. The guy was a little afraid of the taste, so he tried a small piece first. The meat seemed to dissolve in his mouth, and his eyes rolled back in pleasure. Tae-ju couldn't enjoy the amazing taste. A still-living deer, from which this meat came, appeared in his head. He thought about how the taste of the spore water deer was the main delicacy of the Samhan Empire. Previously, there was no way to remove the poison, so any random carcass found was monopolized by the emperor. Tae-ju considered himself a good man for choosing the water deer antidote as the next medicine. The original plan was to prevent civilian casualties from water deer poison during monster waves. Once people try reindeer meat, they won't be able to stop. Tae-ju thought about selling meat to the emperor. Perhaps he could see the Grandmaster's swordsmanship. His thoughts were interrupted by a quiet cough from Beck, who clearly wanted to say something. Beck thanked Tae-ju for treating them to such valuable meat, adding that he could not have imagined that the new medicine would become an antidote to this terrible deer. But he switched gears and asked if nothing would happen if they just closed the pharmacy. Reaching for another piece, Tae-ju said not to worry and just trust him. adding that if they don't sell the antidote, they will clearly be at a loss. The next day, the leader of the raid group, Park Jin-soo, came to Bayek's pharmacy. He stood on the street and was indignant that the pharmacy had been closed for 5 days and there were only a couple of antidotes left. A guy next to him said that the autonomous committee demanded that the formula be revealed, and Beck, unable to withstand the pressure, closed down. Jin-soo became even more angry because he was living proof of the quality of their products. He didn't understand why they were talking nonsense and how they dared to say such things about Beck. The guy called these guys over and immediately grabbed his sword, getting quite aggressive. In front of him stood Master Lee Jun-hak, who shouted at Jin-soo to stop because there was no room for disturbances there. Jin-soo wondered what the guard captain was doing there, thinking that he was connected to the committee. Jun-hak said this was a decision of the standing committee, so sales are prohibited until the formula analysis is completed. The guy cried out that he had participated in clinical trials and that he was fine. The crowd that had already arrived joined him, also saying that they had taken the antidote and were fine. Jun-hak clearly didn't like this. A sly smile appeared on his face, and all he said was that he was curious. He menacingly asked the crowd since when trash like them started to contradict him. Jun-hak thought about the damn official forcing him to deal with all sorts of nonsense. But if it weren't for the opinion of the majority, everyone started to turn around and leave, realizing that nothing could be resolved. Only Jin-soo remained in his place, folding his arms across his chest and showing all his dissatisfaction with the current situation. Jun-hak became seriously angry and grabbed his sword, shouting at Jin-soo not to force him to fight. The guy was quite scared, and deciding not to contradict him, he left rather quickly, apologizing at the end. Jun-hak was disappointed, hoping that he would not have to do this again. He didn't care who was selling the medicine, but Hoon Seok was manipulating the standing committee, which really irritated him. At this time, Hong Seok was driving somewhere in a car, talking on the phone. He giggled with the officer that he even made Jun-hak obey. The officer said that under majority rule, they could do nothing. Hong Seok said that as long as the masters remain silent, this matter will be resolved quickly since they have already begun the next operation. He added that he would reward the officer generously, but they wouldn't last even a week. At this time, Tae-ju arrived at Lieutenant General Oh Jin-hyun's office. The conversation was quite tense, but the general was clearly interested in it. Tae-ju said that they will supply 1 million units to the Jirisan Monster Defense Corps, adding that the price remains the same, 50,000 won per unit. Having calculated how much it would cost in total, the general was clearly confused by the figure of 50 billion won. Tae-ju was a little upset as to why he was upset that they were supplying the army at a standard price. The boy told Tae-ju that he felt like the corps commander was in a very good mood. The general asked the guy if he was still making a profit with such a low price. Tae-ju clearly didn't expect to hear such a question and even asked again. Without saying anything else, the general turned to the adjutant, asking him if they could allocate 50 billion from the reserve fund. Tae-ju asked not to rush, clarifying that there was one more point in this deal. He said he plans to start a company soon, so he recently developed another new drug. The guy unfolded the paper, which contained a beautiful and large piece of water deer meat. Handing him a piece, he asked Jin-hyun to try it, and taking hold of the cup, he began to smile. Jin-hyun looked at the meat and couldn't believe his eyes. He couldn't even say anything right away. Tae-ju decided to break the awkward silence and said that this piece was especially for him. The general said it was quite good, adding that he had hoped to see a cure. The guy said that this was the meat of a spore-bearing water deer, which was worth presenting to the emperor. Hearing this, the adjutant cried out in surprise. It was hard to believe. Seeing such an emotional reaction, Tae-ju felt quite pleased. The general said that he had been thinking about this for a long time, and that there was a great shortage of people like Tae-ju in the army, and he suggested that he return to service. This made the guy a little angry, not understanding why he was offering him a contract. The Chirisan Beast Defense Legion is located in a remote province of the Samhan Empire. Their duties include holding back the waves of demonic beasts and keeping their numbers under control. If you keep the animals at bay in this wilderness, you'll barely break even, but make a mistake and all the blame falls on you. The general was very attracted by the antidote to the poison of the spore-bearing water deer. The adjutant entered the office and said that he had transferred the deposit and also carried out the rest of the instructions. He said the reason they went for the deal was because of a conflict with the pharmacy association led by Hoon Seok. The general said it was an excellent job and ordered him to keep an eye on Tae-ju and help out as needed. Suddenly, he smiled and said that the adjutant had supported him well, even when he had lost all his connections. The guy exhaled heavily and thanked her, adding that he finally admitted it. The general turned sharply towards him and screamed, which scared the guy a little. In response, the adjutant also cried out, addressing the man as a commander. Jin Hyun placed his hand on the boy's shoulder, patting him lightly. Hugging him, he said that they should use this chance to return to the imperial court. The guy said that he would follow him faithfully no matter what happened. At this time, on the outskirts of the city of Kure, in the house of Kim Tae-ju, active negotiations were underway with Baek. Tae-ju cried out with joy that the company's founding was in full swing. Baek told the guy that once he picked a name, he would quickly finish the rest. Tae-ju said that fortunately, the contract with the military was successful, and the lieutenant general even paved the way for them, saving them from trouble. He inadvertently leaked information about a contract with the army and the development of a new drug. Tae-ju said that the initiative was now on their side, and Baek said that he had already paid off all the debts with the advance. Baek said he was pleased to sever all ties with the bank and close his accounts there. Tae-ju said that he was a good boy and that he could use the remaining money for the needs of the shelter. After which, he immediately started talking about how he would not be able to manage the company alone. The boy approached Mr. Baek and asked to become his partner. Baek said he had only ever managed a small drugstore and didn't think he would be much use. Tae-ju said that he knows how to create medicines, but he doesn't know how to sell them, and he can't do it without Baek's help. Baek thought for a bit. He was very pleased to hear this, and he agreed. The man said that the business was destined to succeed and proposed a 9-to-1 split of shares, which Tae-ju did not agree to. Tae-ju said that since Baek would be in charge of management, he wanted him to be as involved as possible and suggested a 7-to-3 ratio. Baek said he would accept his offer, but he had someone else in mind to manage it. The man said that Tae-ju had already seen her in front of the shelter's bunker, Baek Sung-yeon. Adding that she was the smartest among his children, he clarified that if Tae-ju didn't mind, he would call her right now. Tae-ju thought about how Baek had been taking care of orphans for over 20 years, and each of them had mastered different professions. Having shaken hands, the guy realized once again that he had not been mistaken about him. Tae-ju asked Baek to apply on behalf of Tai Hong Bio, Tai on behalf of Tae-ju, and Hong on behalf of Hong Pyo. Suddenly, Baek remembered that he had summoned the Awakened One and the Adapter who had previously lived in his shelter. Tae-ju was slightly surprised and asked him what the rush was all about. Baek said that people like Hoon Seok tend to use brute force, so he asked them to become Tae-ju's bodyguards. The guy said he was okay and told them to do a better job of protecting the shelter. At that moment, Baek wondered what Tae-ju was even counting on when he acted so self-confidently. Looking at him, Baek noticed that the guy didn't even have a pattern on his face, which meant that he was an adapter at best. He immediately remembered that Tae-ju had said that he had been a soldier and wondered if he really relied solely on that. Tae-ju told Baek that he felt some mistrust and said that it was time for them to start trusting each other. Baek said that he had misunderstood everything and that he had no one else to trust except him. Tae-ju suggested that this time they clarify everything completely and asked to call those guys now. While putting on his coat, the boy said that he wanted to prove his abilities and test the antidote to the spore poison. He said with a smile on his face that he would go hunting with them. After saying these words, he immediately went to the Chirisan demonic beast border zone. There were 4 other guys with him who followed straight behind Tae-ju. A guy noticed that Tae-ju was wearing a ghost fox fur coat that cost over 4 billion won. The guy decided that he lived like a porter, either an opportunist or an ordinary person. A guy named Baek Chang-hoon said that demonic beasts would start appearing from now on, so he would go first. Tae-ju, without turning around, told Chang-hoon to simply call him Hyun-nim. Chang-hoon repeated that he should stay behind him, since he was still awakened and his survival skills would be better than his. When Tae-ju turned around, the boy immediately apologized to him, thinking that his words made him feel uncomfortable. Tae-ju said with a smile that he was already used to this, because he was worried because he was not awakened. He suggested that we first sort out something and then talk. Chang-hong looked at him in surprise, not understanding what kind of thing he was talking about. Looking up, he noticed many pairs of red eyes looking straight at them. Chang-hong cried out in panic that it was a storm weasel, and at the same time, a shudder ran through his entire body from panic. As soon as he cried out, the weasels immediately rushed straight at the guy. There was another guy standing behind him, already holding a gun in his hands, getting ready to shoot. Chang-hong screamed in panic that a whole flock of storm weasels had already arrived. Tae-ju realized that the situation was quite critical and decided that his time had come. He immediately reached for the nails that were in his coat and was ready to show his strength and abilities. On the other hand, he took out some balls. They looked quite heavy, but not large. Tae-ju fixed his intense, angry gaze on the weasels and exhaled heavily. He released both the nails and the balls from his hands at once, and they flew rapidly towards the weasels. The guy screamed that there would be a sudden explosion, and that's what happened. Chang Hong stood in one place as if stunned, not knowing what to say to what he saw. Storm weasels are weak individually, but in a pack they become formidable opponents as they attack in packs of 20. These magical beasts were so powerful that someone of Chang Hoon's rank would never dare to dream of touching them. The guy was stunned by how quickly the weasels were defeated, that he didn't even have time to blink. Taeju closed his eyes and stood silently, shaking the dirt off his hands, and did not look at anyone. The only thing on his mind was how unfortunate it was that they had run into the storm weasels. He was a little depressed that he didn't have time to take out the dagger, which had to be picked up after each use. Taeju wouldn't be able to look back in the eyes if the children were hurt. And in the end, he unleashed a barrage of Tang Clan's hidden anti-personnel weapons, a rain of pear blossoms and iron bullets. But the main problem was that these 200-odd shells could no longer be returned. At times like these, he desperately regrets not having mastered the 7th star of the poison art, so that the projectiles would fly into his hands on their own. Chang Hoon said that he had heard that masters were able to hide the patterns on their faces and asked if Taeju was the master. Taeju said with a smile that he was definitely not awakened, and in any case, he would go first from now on. The boy reached out his hand to him and wanted to say something about his father and their conversation, but stopped. He stopped because Taeju said quite rudely that he didn't care. After some time, the team was already making their way through some bushes. Taeju, seeing a clearing ahead, pushed aside the bushes and saw a spore water deer. Hearing the rustling, the deer immediately turned his head towards the sounds and pricked up his ears. Chang Hoon asked Taejun if it was really a water deer and then asked what their plan was. Taeju told everyone to look at the deer, saying that he now knew that its poison had no effect on them. He told him to take the antidote because they would be hunting him now. The guys were a little shocked, hoping that Taeju was just joking. Chang Hong looked at the bottle, thinking that the antidote was still in the clinical trial stage. He kept in mind the thought that Taeju was still working with his father, that he was strong and smart, and that he could be trusted. Having drunk it all in one gulp, Chang Hong decided that it was their turn to prove their usefulness. The guy stepped forward, saying that if the deer tried to escape, the others should cover it with mana cannons. Chang Hong swung his sword and fixed his gaze on the deer, preparing to attack it. Running forward, already quite close to the deer, he noticed that the animal was frightened. In just a second, fear turned into strong aggression, and he made a loud and strange sound. This sound was so loud that it could be heard over a great distance around. The guy decided that there was no point in hesitating, and with a powerful jump, he swung his sword with all his might. Chang Hong used the ability, one hit two halves, and cut the animal into 2 parts. The head of the agile water deer fell to the ground with a loud crash. The girl, seeing this, screamed that his hump was about to explode and that she needed to hide. As soon as she said this, the humps actually burst immediately, and molecules of poison began to fly out of them. These molecules spread through the air as if surrounding the team. Taeju thought about how he was skeptical at first, but things weren't that bad after all. Looking at Chang Hoon, he realized that he was a bit short, but he had plenty of courage. The girl turned to Chang Hoon and cried out joyfully that she was completely fine. Chang Hong breathed a sigh of relief, realizing that the antidote really did work. Taeju said that with such an antidote, such a beast is a mere trifle, and its roar is stronger than its bite. Removing the poison, it becomes an ordinary weakling. The boy apologized to Taeju, saying that he was sorry for doubting his antidote. Taeju told the boys that if everything was okay, they should move on because the hunt was not over yet. He added that if they knew how to cut up carcasses, then he needed the meat of this deer. In the capital of the Samhan Empire, in New Seoul, formerly the region of Manchuria, active negotiations were underway in the office at the Marine Group headquarters. The work was quite active. No one was distracted or got up from their seats. However, someone broke the silence and loudly called out to the head of the department, Beck So-yeon, the youngest department head in the Strategic Planning Department of Marine Group. Jong Joo-hak, Deputy Director of the Strategic Planning Department. Jo-hak asked So-yeon if she was really from the orphanage run by Baek Hong-pyo. The man leaned towards the girl and, smiling, told her to drop all the projects she was currently working on. So-yeon felt uneasy and looked at the deputy in surprise, thinking that something had happened. Joo-hak said that in order to take care of the projects, she needed to go to Cure and settle a small matter for him. So-yeon asked the man why he suddenly brought this up. The man said that everyone was trumpeting about Taehong Bio's startup. So-yeon couldn't understand what had suddenly happened to him that made her have to give up all her projects. Joo-hak said that Biox Pharmacy was a subsidiary of Taehong Bio, but the girl indignantly said that her father had not told her anything. He told her to go to Cure, stay close to her father, and find out everything about the antidote and get its formula. So Yeon was shocked that she was being forced to betray her father and become a spy. Suddenly, something distracted the girl. She turned her head to the side and looked at the table. The girl's phone rang. It was her father. She asked the deputy if he could answer. The man told her not to delay her answer because he had to go and give a report soon. "Talk to your father." The girl had a wide smile on her face. They didn't talk for long. Joo-hak nervously said that it had been a long time and asked what she had decided about going to Kure. So Yeon put on a rather menacing look and firmly said that she would go. As soon as Joo-hak became happy, he said that he wanted to discuss the details, but the girl interrupted him. She threw her work card at him, so sharply and forcefully that the man even screamed. So Yeon, with a wide smile on her face, screamed that she was quitting this lousy office. As she left, she said that she was always annoyed by the way he looked down on everyone. Joo-hak was furious and started shouting that So Yeon had simply gone crazy and he didn't understand where she got such self-importance from. It was already nighttime at this time in the building belonging to Kim Tae-ju in Gure. The guys were in the warehouse, looking at all the shelves and studying the products on them. Tae-ju looked at everyone and said that they did a great job today. He added that they should now return to the shelter and rest, and he would deal with the rest himself. Chung-hoon immediately asked Tae-ju about his safety, since his father had told him to protect him. Tae-ju said that he had better focus on protecting the children and the CEO. The boy hoped that they would be safer in the shelter, thinking that no one would dare touch the shelter. But he couldn't deny that this world was full of crazy bastards who were capable of anything. Tae-ju went out to see the boys off and waved his hand as he left, trying to drive away the negative thoughts. He understood that it was precisely because of such thoughts that he needed reliable comrades, but not children from the orphanage. Tae-ju decided that once the company's structure was secure, he would be able to develop new drugs. The guy planned to earn a decent amount of money and settle down, but things took a serious turn. Tae-ju had no problems with income at all. In fact, everything was fine in that regard. Thanks to his good earnings, he was even able to buy himself a large and luxurious house. Tae-ju couldn't get used to the idea of having his own home. It was strange to him. Entering the house, the guy carefully reached for the coat rack to hang his coat. Since childhood, he rejected mana, which is why he thought he would die in Paju, but he was lucky to survive. Although his stepmother tried to kill Tae-ju by sending him to the army, after awakening through the fusion of souls with Tangun-ak, he came to Kura, where he was able to develop an antidote while working as a porter. His greatest achievement was meeting good people. The guy lay on the bed and thought about how much had happened in a short period of time. He decided for himself that Kura would be his starting point, a foundation on which he could stand with pride. While Tae-ju was thinking about his life before going to bed, two men approached his house. One of them turned out to be the leader of the criminal organization Kure, Ma Sang-shik. Sang-shik told his partner that the newcomer was already buying up real estate and acting like a big shot. The man said the mosquito repellent had become a hit, and he had heard that a deer repellent was coming out soon. Sang-shik immediately became angry, saying that they already knew about it without him because everyone was talking about it. He added that if it weren't for Hoon-seok's request, he would have kidnapped Tae-ju himself and shaken the formula out of him. He immediately said that they could not allow the master to cut off their supplies and they would do what they were told. Approaching the main entrance door, the second man began to try to pick the lock with a needle. They successfully managed to open the door and enter the house, and they immediately went to the stairs. Sang-shik said that as soon as they entered, they should not waste time talking, but should immediately inject him. They made their way into the room quite quietly, and one of them was already holding a syringe in his hands. The excitement was, of course, quite strong, because it was an attempt on the life of a stranger. Approaching the bed, the man swung with all his might, already preparing to stick the needle into him and pump him full of dope. He squeezed the syringe tightly with his hand to make sure he didn't miss and hit the target straight. His actions were fast enough, but as soon as Tae-ju's hand got closer to his neck, he grabbed his hand. Tae-ju told him that he had originally intended to just take the injection anyway. Sang-shik stood there in bewilderment, not understanding why his partner had stopped abruptly. The man said nervously that he couldn't move his hand no matter how hard he tried. Sang-shik had already become a little aggressive and loudly asked him what was going on. The man began to turn his head in different directions, trying to figure out where the guy had gone, and noticed that the syringe was also gone. Tae-ju stood in front of him and said that he forgot to mention that he hated injections because they hurt. The man panicked and asked his boss if Tae-ju was really rejecting mana, realizing that he was much more capable than they expected. Tae-ju mockingly asked them if the effect would be weaker if he swallowed the contents of the syringe. Sang-shik aggressively called the guy a worthless bastard. saying that he had no right to yelp while taking his drug. Suddenly, the man's face changed. He was clearly very surprised by something and could not put words together. Tae-ju, with a sly smile on his face, began to squeeze the drug out of the syringe little by little, directly onto his tongue. Throwing the syringe on the floor, the guy screamed that they were drugs and started laughing loudly. His expression changed, and he asked if they had any more, saying that this poison worked quite well. There have long been rumors that a certain syndicate from the Kur slums is involved in drug trafficking. Even the standing committee couldn't stop them, which means there must be someone influential behind them. At the fourth star of the poison spirit art, Tae-ju's body can easily handle ordinary drugs. Tan-gun-ak had encountered all sorts of drugs before, so Tae-ju accepted it too. And in order to increase the level of his poisonous essence, Tae-ju absorbed drugs from their bodies. Once the guy finished with one, he looked at Sang-shik, saying it was his turn and asked who sent it. Sang-shik immediately began to deny it, saying that if he told, they would kill him. Tae-ju didn't press him further, but simply agreed, saying that he would make a new person out of him. The night was quite long and cruel. The next day, early in the morning, Jun-hak went somewhere. He was sitting in the car and thinking about something. His face was expressionless. He seemed to be in a depressed state. Jun-hak asked someone if it was really Tae-ju, the one who created the mosquito antidote, who made the report. The girl replied that Sang-shik's gang was caught when they broke into his house trying to kidnap him. Jun-hak, hearing this, covered his face with his hand, realizing that this was all the work of Hoon-seok and was very dissatisfied with his work. He himself understood that it would be faster to put pressure on Hoon-seok and force him to make peace, but he would never agree to that. And in the end, the conflict will simply drag on. And since they demanded a thorough investigation, this will fall on the shoulders of the guards. Jun-hak wondered if that method was really the only way out of the situation. At this time, at Tae-ju's house, 4 of Sang-shik's gang and himself were kneeling in front of the guy and Bok. Sang-shik was in a terrible state, constantly asking for a dose as soon as possible. Suddenly, the sound of doors closing was heard, followed by the loud footsteps of Jun-hak and his partners. Baek greeted them happily, saying that they had arrived quickly enough and he was glad to see them. Jun-hak walked past Baek, aggressively telling him to get out of the way and not interfere. The guy came up behind Sang-shik and heard him barely trying to ask for a fix. The girl approached Baek and told him to move as far back as possible immediately. Without thinking, Jun-hak slowly pulled the sword out of its sheath, and a loud metallic sound was heard. He raised his hand and cried out that with the power given to him, he would carry out the immediate execution. Suddenly, a bright glow appeared. The sword flew to the side, and somewhere to the side, someone said, "Stop immediately." Tae-ju calmly asked Jun-hak why he was killing the witness. He showed a recording on his phone where Sang-shik said that Hoon-seok ordered them to kidnap Tae-ju and get him hooked on drugs. The guy said that judging by the situation, they already know everything that's going on, even without him. Jun-hak screamed in rage, asking the boy who he was and how dare he contradict him. Tae-ju introduced himself, and immediately Jun-hak's face became even more aggressive, as if he was ready to kill him right then and there. He looked around, the veins on his forehead bulging with rage. He spoke in a quiet voice through his teeth about the antidote. Coming closer, Jun-hak said that he wanted to take a closer look at his famous face. Suddenly, it seemed like a realization came to him. He said that he had seen Tae-ju somewhere before, trying to remember. Immediately, fragments of the moment when he saw and even talked to him began to come to his mind. Remembering, he said that Tae-ju, that same lousy porter from the past, was on that very raid. These words deeply affected the guy. His gaze turned to Jun-hak, and his aggression grew stronger. Jun-hak asked him if it was really he who created the mosquito and deer antidote. Tae-ju, without thinking, immediately replied that it was him, adding that it didn't matter at all. Jun-hak smiled and said that it was absolutely nothing important while in Kur. The guy grabbed the sword and said with a smile that he didn't care, because his word was law. He offered Tae-ju to slit the throats of Sang-shik's gang, and this is his last offer. The guy immediately said that he could not allow this to happen under any circumstances. The boy swung and suddenly screamed loudly, so Tae-ju would try to stop him. Although Tae-ju was ready for a fight, he clearly didn't like what was happening. He immediately reached for the collar of his coat. He took out his daggers, and with every movement he made, a bright glow emanated from his body. The daggers were aimed straight at Jun-hak, and this realization made the guy a little nervous. From his dexterous movements throwing away his daggers, Jun-hak realized that back then, during the raid, it was Tae-ju who caught the guys. Jun-hak looked at his hand and noticed a small cut and said that he had pretty good skills. With a wry smile, he added that for the crime of double interference, he sentenced Tae-ju to death. At that moment, the guy began to wonder if his title was really that special. Suddenly, he asked Jun-hak what gave him the right, as the guild master, to do whatever he wanted. After saying these words, Tae-ju made a big jump, and while right above him, he launched his daggers again. His daggers flew with incredible speed, rushing down and straight at Jun-hak. The guy swung, preparing to defend himself from the blow, and lightning flew in all directions from his sword. Suddenly, a helicopter appeared in the sky, as if from nowhere, and they were told over the loudspeaker to stop. As soon as the helicopter flew up and hovered over the house, people began jumping out of it one after another. One of the men turned out to be Jin Hyun, the commander of the Jirisan Monster Defense Corps. The man looked at Jun-hak with a smile and told him to stop what was happening. The men stood next to everyone. Beck was very shocked by the whole situation. When Jin Young realized that Jun-hak's aggression was only increasing, he repeated his request to stop. Jun-hak approached the commander and said sarcastically that they had not seen each other for quite some time. Jin Hyun asked the boy with a smile what brought him to such a distant place as the free city of Kure. The guy shouted aggressively that he didn't need permission to come anywhere. Jin Hyun spread his arms in different directions and said that he would assume that the military had decided to interfere in the affairs of Kure. Realizing that his words were only provoking Jun-hak, he said that he did not come here as a soldier and that he could breathe a sigh of relief. As he left, Jin Hyun waved his hand and said that he was here as an ordinary civilian. These words made Jun-hak very angry. He didn't know what to do with himself so as not to do something stupid. At this time, Jin Hyun walked up to Tae-ju and immediately extended his hand to greet him, asking if he was okay. The guy was pleasantly surprised. He shook the commander's hand and reassured him, saying that everything was fine with him. Someone immediately asked the guy who did all this that he just needed to give a name. It was the division commander of the Mount Jirisan Magical Beast Defense Corps, Jun Yeon, who said he would sort it out completely. The division commander, Major General Pil Song, said he would send several off-duty officers to protect him. The division commander, Major General Jun Tai, suggested ordering some restorative medicine for Tae-ju. At that moment, Jun-hak thought that it would be difficult to come to an agreement with four masters, who were also warriors to the core. He realized that he had no choice and would have to let Tae-ju go for a while, intending to take revenge on him after some time. Jin Hyun was surprised that the guy was about to leave and suggested that he stay for a while. Jun-hak cried out in anger that he didn't have that much free time. Hearing this, a smile appeared on the commander's face, and he said that it was unexpected for him to hear this. The guy didn't quite understand why this was said and what the commander meant and stopped. Jin Hyun said that if he was so busy, he should have dealt with Sang-shik's gang a long time ago. As he left, Jun-hak ordered his guys to load up the gang and they would deal with them themselves. The commander's face changed at that very moment, and he said that he would take on this job. The guy cried out in rage that he had already said several times that the military would not interfere. Jin Hyun said that he couldn't do otherwise because the gang wanted to kidnap his close friend. These words clearly did not please Jun-hak, and he cried out that this was a violation of the imperial decree. Jin Hyun became very angry and asked him if he really thought he was joking just because they were both masters. Hearing this, Jun-hak's face was covered in small beads of sweat, and there was no expression on it. The commander asked the boy what punishment he would receive if he cut his throat. The guy grabbed the sword with one hand and cried out that he wouldn't get away with this just like that. The other commanders began to laugh, saying that he was naive if he thought they were afraid to touch him. This left the guy at a loss. He understood that the military was against him and there was no way out. Jun-hak's partners stood to the side. They were very nervous, but they didn't even think about taking a step. The guy lowered his eyes and exhaled heavily, a feeling of hopelessness tormenting him inside. Jun-hak turned his head sharply and shouted for everyone to get into their cars, that it was time for them to leave. Finally, Commander Jun Hyun said that this brat had been spoiled badly in Kure. Tae-ju approached him and thanked him with a smile for such active support. Jin Hyun laughed, saying that there was no need to thank him for that since they were in the same boat. Beck also intervened in the conversation, apologizing for calling so suddenly. Beck added that if it had not been for the speed of the commanders, a disaster would have occurred. Tae-ju turned to Bayek and said that it was good that he called, because thanks to him, the situation was resolved in the best possible way. Turning his head towards Sang-shik's gang, he added that they had not handed over the witnesses to them. Jin Hyun, hearing this, put his hand on Tae-ju's shoulder and was about to say something, but he made a small sigh. He said that he would deal with them, and the main one, the one who pulls their strings himself. Jin Hyun added that this was not just his problem, as the safety of the entire corps was at stake. The commander said that he would take care of all the formalities so that he would not have to deal with Junhak again. Tae-ju thought about the fact that his dagger had hit him, but the 4th-tier poison was still ineffective against the master. Junhak showed no symptoms until the very end, and Tae-ju immediately wondered if he could have defeated him on his own. The only thing he decided for himself was that he absolutely needed to become even stronger as soon as possible. Having said goodbye to everyone, the commanders began to lead Sanshik's gang away and fly back. Already in the car, Junhak was talking about how Tae-ju and Jin-hyun should die, but suddenly his condition worsened sharply. Looking at his hand, he noticed that the scratch was glowing, and the thought came to his mind that it was poison. Right before his eyes, the poison began to spread at a furious speed throughout his entire arm. His body was alternately hot and cold. Everything inside him was boiling, and the pain was unbearable. The arm was throbbing violently. There was no longer a single living spot visible on it. The trembling throughout the body only increased. Literally within a few minutes, the poison had spread throughout the body, partially affecting the face. The girl looked in the mirror and saw that something was happening to Junhak and called him. The boy screamed loudly in panic for her to take him to the hospital immediately. Hearing this, the girl ran as fast as she could. Junhak could barely lift his hand. His eyes were rolling back in his head, and he could barely think straight. At this time, a helicopter carrying military personnel was flying straight to the magical monster defense building. Jin-hyun watched Sang-shik closely as he shook violently. Sang-shik could barely speak. He was exhausted, but he said that he would tell everything he knew. Jin-hyun looked at him with a smile and said that he wouldn't have to bother since they already knew everything. The commander turned to Jun-tae. The boy immediately jumped up from his seat and headed towards him. Jun-tae understood without words. He walked towards the door and opened it. They were already quite high from the ground. Jin-hyun, without hesitation, told him to take out Sang-shik's gang and himself one by one. The men begged for mercy, promising that they would obey them, but all was in vain. After throwing everyone out of the helicopter, the guy looked at Jin-hyun and said that he was done with the cleanup. Jin-hyun immediately ordered the guy to deal with Hoon-seok as well, adding that the guys should send several detachments to Taihang Bio for their safety. Jin-hyun decided that he would take this chance to establish a connection with Tae-ju. At this time, Baek So-yeon arrived in the free city of Kure. The girl already wanted to see her father as soon as possible. Suddenly, her phone rang. Looking at the screen, she saw that it was Baek Chan-hoon. The girl picked up the phone and said that she was already at the terminal, that she had just left. Seo-yeon was shocked to learn that Tae-ju had donated billions to her father's orphanage. The girl said that the last time she saw him, she mistook him for a swindler. After getting into the taxi, Song-yeon said that they would see each other at home very soon and hung up. So-yeon stared out the window and, still in shock but already in a good mood, told the driver to take her to Baek's shelter. She could not shake the thought that her father had not called her to return to Kure for no reason. After some time, So-yeon finally arrived at her father's orphanage and was already looking forward to their meeting. In the courtyard of the shelter, Baek and the boys made a fire with a pot on it. So-yeon, as soon as she saw her father, immediately cried out with joy. Baek was also happy to hear his familiar voice. The girl was happy to see such a joyful reaction from her father to her arrival. Baek put his hand on the girl's shoulder and thanked her for coming. They came to the kettle, and Buck said that they had caught a spore water deer. That was why they were having a feast. The girl, hearing this, was very surprised and could not believe her ears about the deer. So Yeon asked her father if what Chang-hoon said was true, and Baek agreed with it. They went to the table. Baek said that Mr. Tae-ju was already waiting for the girl. At this time, Tae-ju served food to all the children and asked them to be careful. As soon as Baek and So-yeon approached Tae-ju, Baek introduced his daughter to him. Tae-ju turned his head and a smile appeared on his face. He said that he was very pleased to meet you. He immediately remembered their first meeting near the basement and decided to check if they had met before. So-yeon laughed awkwardly and apologized for her rudeness that time, adding that she hoped for a fruitful collaboration. The girl added that she will make every effort to ensure that Taihang Bio thrives. Suddenly, loud footsteps were heard from somewhere to the side, which attracted Tae-ju's attention. Major Do Min-soo stepped forward, saying that he and 14 other men had arrived to ensure Taihang's safety. Tae-ju extended his hand, saying that he was afraid there wouldn't be enough room for everyone. Min-soo extended his hand in response with a smile and said that they had brought field equipment with them. After shaking hands, Min-soo added that he would give his life just to protect him. Tae-ju smiled and offered the major some water deer soup to start with. The major immediately turned to the soldiers and ordered them to unpack and start eating. Tae-ju exhaled with ease. realizing that he was no longer alone, but had an entire faction with him. At this time, in the Kur fortress, Hong Seok was furious. The screams could be heard throughout almost the entire building. In the Autonomous Committee's courtroom, the judge listed a series of crimes. The judge asked Hoon Seok if he agreed to plead guilty. Hong Seok, closing his eyes and gritting his teeth, barely audibly agreed with the accusations, realizing that he had no choice. After the meeting, Hong Seok walked down the corridor and thought only about the fact that Tai-ju was still alive. He stopped and asked himself in anger where it all went wrong. Having gone down to the parking lot, the man headed towards the car, thinking that now he had no other choice. He knew that if he lay low for a while, things would eventually calm down. The car was racing at incredible speed, and the traffic light turned red. Hoon Seok looked in the rearview mirror and noticed a motorcyclist riding next to the car. Having already seen him through the window, he tried to understand who it was and what was happening. Suddenly, a bat flew through the window with all its force, and fragments scattered throughout the cabin. The shrapnel seriously injured Hoon Seok, and he lost control of the car, which flew off the cliff. As soon as the car fell into the water, the motorcyclist radioed that the mission was completed and he was returning to base. At this time, in a local hospital, in a private room, Jin Hak was suffering from pain on his bed. He couldn't find a place for himself. His body was shaking, and the pain was getting worse with every minute. His partner opened the door holding a bag in his hand and said that he had brought what he had asked him for. He held out a high-quality elixir from Marine Fractional. Jin Hak's eyes were almost bulging out. He quietly told the guy to quickly give him the elixir. As soon as the elixir was in his hand, Jin Hak immediately brought it to his mouth. After drinking it, something strange began to happen inside his body. Exhaling easily, the guy smiled and said that everything worked. The real elixir, worth 10 billion won, worked and prevented him from dying. But these were just his thoughts. After a few seconds, Jin Hak lost consciousness. Tae-ju traveled to the Jirisan Mountains to create a new medicine from the gallbladder of a giant Himalayan black bear. He understood that since he was already here, he needed to find new poisons for the art of the poison spirit. It had only been a short time since he had reached the 4th star, but he expected that he was already on the threshold of moving on to the 5th. Suddenly, something caught Tae-ju's attention. He smelled a strange smell. He found a tree with poisonous sap. It secretes toxins from its bark to prevent pests from eating away at its trunk. Tae-ju licked his finger and realized that the taste was quite sweet, which meant that the poison was good. Not far away, he noticed a blue-bellied toad. The poison is contained in the blue part of its abdomen. It has anesthetic properties, so I decided to take it for research as well. After some time, a giant white tree centipede caught my eye. The poison of such a centipede is very strong, so strong that it can even kill an orc. Tae-ju let her bite him and immediately felt the power of her poison and the fresh taste. He walked through the forest for a long time, didn't come across anything new, but suddenly the guy stopped abruptly. Looking to the side, a certain trace appeared not far from him in the bushes. Immediately, a huge head with powerful horns and red eyes appeared. It was a giant Himalayan bear, which made Tai-ju very happy. As soon as the guy came closer to him, the bear squealed throughout the forest. Tae-ju met him earlier than he expected, and he was already eager to find out how strong he was. The guy took daggers out of his coat and placed them between all his fingers. A second later, he had already sent them with a quick blow at the bear. They flew at a furious speed. The daggers hit the bear straight, and he growled very loudly in pain. Tae-ju was quite surprised that the bear's size did not prevent it from being very nimble. They stood opposite each other. The bear was furious and ready to attack. But Tae-ju had no intention of giving up. Instead, he used a swift impulse step. A large number of daggers were stuck into the bear's back, which made him even more angry. But the bear arched its back and all the daggers flew in different directions. Then Tae-ju decided to use the blood poison palm and struck straight into the bear's stomach, piercing it. The bear squealed loudly throughout the forest. The birds flew away in different directions, and the boy calmly watched him. The bear swung with all his might and hit the tree, breaking it into small pieces. The guy deftly took advantage of the ghostly mirage's steps and moved as stealthily as possible, confusing the monster. Stopping, Tae-ju thought about how his attacks weren't working on him. The bear really turned out to be stronger than the expert, with a 4th-rank poison spirit art. Defeating him would not be easy. The guy was already quite tired, and the realization that nothing was changing weighed him down even more. Tae-ju knew he had no choice but to become stronger right now. He immediately pulled out a blue-bellied frog and reached out to swallow it, trying not to think about the fact that it was still a living creature. Poisonous energy rushes through his meridians like a tidal wave. After a few minutes, The guy felt that the process was successfully completed. The art of primordial chaos and absolute poison spirit. He reached the 5th star, which made him very happy. Staring at the bear, the boy told himself that things would be different now. Tae-ju reached into his coat and pulled out the Poison Clan weapon he had been looking forward to. After which, the guy released 2 bloody butterflies from his palm, which began to slowly rise into the air. At his hand movement, 2 butterflies quickly headed towards the furious bear. Blood Butterfly is a hidden weapon technique that can only be used after reaching rank 5. The butterfly allows Tae-ju to freely change the trajectory of the hidden weapon using internal energy. Butterflies began to penetrate the eyes and ears of the huge bear, causing him to squeal loudly, experiencing severe pain. Blood started pouring from his eyes. He stood in one place and couldn't even move. And then the guy realized that it was all over. Tae-ju achieved both of his goals simultaneously, reaching the 5th star and tracking down the Himalayan black bear. He looked at the dead bear with a smile and a feeling of pride in himself. The boy cut open the bear's belly and removed a gallbladder that was shining with a bright yellow light. Tae-ju was a little surprised, realizing that the poison in him was probably powerful. To extract the poison from the gallbladder, the guy needed to envelop it in energy. As soon as he did this, a smile appeared on his face. Tae-ju could now make the elixir.